Greetings.
Hello.
Greetings.
My greetings.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello and welcome to episode 186 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. Joining you from Gadsden, New York is me, Ridiculous Hat. From Karazhan, California, we have Botticus.
It's me.
From the Maelstrom, Louisiana, we have Appa.
It's me, Botticus.
That's... You're not Botticus.
No, I'm not Botticus.
Botticus.
That's when you two
Appicus.
co-op,
There we go.
or co-cast, as it were, which we'll talk about. And Concede is supported in large part by you, the listener. If you'd like to find out how you can support us and receive rewards in return, head to patreon.com/CoinConcede. Big thanks to Stranger for joining us as our latest patron. Props to you, Stranger. You can support us as well by leaving an iTunes review. People find the show. And to get this week, though, we're really stoked to have. We're really stoked about this week. Just the three of us. And I want to ask Appa, how's life in ladder?
It's going well. I'm glad I took a break whenever I did the week that I wasn't on the podcast, because I was getting really frustrated just in general. I mean, I've talked about it a little bit before. I just wasn't enjoying trying to like force the best decks and everything. Just took a little bit of a break to reassess how I was approaching the game. But afterwards, I came back, found my fun, and just decided to play my own stuff, which I hadn't done in like years. Just like building my own deck and trying to get to Legend with it. I think the last time I did that was like from scratch it was when Fiery War Axe was still a card. I did it with like Tempa Mage with double Acidic Swamp Ooze. But I took a Murloc Shaman deck and spent most of the month tweaking it and managed to hit Legend with it, and it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, it's going pretty well. And I earlier today, after I got my rank chest rewards, all the cards were pretty bad, so I disenchanted them all and crafted a golden Archivist Elysiana, which was the last card I needed for my Control Shaman deck. So I have a fully golden Control Shaman deck. And now that the meta has sort of figured itself out for the most part, it's a lot easier to build the Control Shaman deck because you know what answers you need to have and all that kind of stuff. So it's been going pretty well. I have my own Control Shaman build that I'm going to try and climb with this month. And yeah, that's pretty much my plan for this month.
What about you, Botticus? How you been doing?
I've been doing great. I've been playing a lot of Hearthstone. Not as much as I want to have been playing, because last week was just a really good week to do what I like to do in World of Warcraft. So I did that quite a bit, but also played a good amount of Hearthstone, just kind of playing a little bit of everything, a little bit of my brews, a lot more of a deck that, thanks to 85 Hawk, we are now coining Bored to Death, which is my OTK Hunter deck.
That name is so good.
It was a really good
perfect.
name. Yeah, and so was actually winning a lot with it, which was weird because I honestly thought it was just a meme. I played it a bit on stream yesterday and it didn't go as well, but I just kept winning from like 5k up to around almost the low 2ks, which isn't saying a lot because it's still pretty low legend, but like it was winning and that was weird, but it was fun. So did a lot of that. And then yeah, speaking of streaming, I did another co-op yesterday, this time with Dragon Rider DK. So that was a lot of fun. We did not do a ton of winning, but got to play a lot of fun games of Hearthstone, which when I'm playing a deck on stream, there's probably not going to be a lot of winning because I'm going to play something that's a little off the wall, like no win condition rogue. And then yeah, other decks I've been trying out. I tried out Ike's Shaman deck with the exotic color. I think that's what it's called. The 7-mana card that makes 3/3 beasts. Actually doing really well. I was feeling pretty good about that deck. And then I was watching Asmodai last night play his kind of miracle-ish mage in pretty high legend, and I picked that up today, and that's also a lot of fun. So there's just too many decks that I want to be playing right now, and not enough time to play them. But I don't have to worry as much this week about WoW competing for my time, so I expect to be a lot more Hearthstone this week than last week.
Yeah, I had a similar issue to you where instead of playing Hearthstone, I played other Hearthstone. So I wasn't playing WoW, but I was playing a Tavern Brawl. And boy, that Tavern Brawl and this tournament this weekend, it was one of the better media weekends that I've had in a while. And I did not watch Game of Thrones or Avengers, so you know it was a good weekend. There was so much happening in real life. Went to a War of the Spark pre-release. I went 3-1 with a 3-color control deck that I did win with a Jace Ultimate by milling myself out. Played a ton of Tavern Brawl, watched entirely too much of the HCT Worlds Finals, given that it started at 10 p.m. in my local time zone. And a lot of great chatting with people that actually are in the Asia-Pacific time zone, except I was still awake. But that's okay. I think one of my favorite moments was when our friend from Germany, Ermel, woke up and said, "Good morning, everybody," and said, "Good morning, Ermel. Oh, God, I'm still awake when Ermel's getting up. What's going on?" And that was it's entertaining, though, and there was a lot of really lively chat in the Concede Discord. The tournament chat-along was absolutely phenomenal to be a part of. As far as what I'm playing now, I tried to start my day off with some Rogue, and I do like Rogue, but I think I'm going to try and climb with something else this month, just because, I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm rooting for Thanos. It's kind of, it just feels a little evil, and
It's
people
one
are
of those things where it feels like if you need to climb later, you can always just go back to Rogue. But climbing for now, it's kind of fun to play something that's a little more off the wall, or
well,
just a little bit.
yes, and
Not
people are
necessarily
teching.
main meta.
People are teching really hard for it too. Like I did play against a heal druid with double Doomsayer and Harrison and double Ooze and the predatory instincts into Witchwood Grizzly. It was a little bit too much. So
Yeah, that's a lot. They know what matchup they don't want to lose, and
yeah,
probably do a pretty good job of not losing it. Anytime you're teching in 3 weapon cards, it just upsets me. I just I get it. I understand you don't want to lose to Rogue, but 3?
I
well,
only
3
play 2
oozes.
because my third one comes from Shutterwalk.
well, see,
Botticus is shaking his head.
when people don't play or when people do play that much weapon destruction, though they don't play silences. And so when I go in the specialist tournament that we held, and I shark it by playing an anti-warrior deck, and then play against 3 warriors in a row in the top 8, and none of them can silence my giant magnetic mechanical whelps, that goes okay for me. So
Yeah, it looked like it went very well for you.
So I also did that. So Bot and Appa right before this stream, actually, they casted me playing against Catality in the Coin Concede Listener Series Finals. We originally were planning on none of the hosts were going to make top 8, so I got exactly 9th, and then one player ended up dropping out of the top 8, and so I snuck in because after me was a 3-way tie, and it got really messy. I'm like, okay, I'll just play. And then I took a Paladin list from a player named Simacomp, who I know through THL. He played 98 Open Cups. Did not qualify. I feel bad for him, but he's a great player. And it's really good against Warrior. And then my top 8 opponents, Rebobson and Shellcod and Caketality, all 3 were playing Warrior. So I'm magnetized.
What you're saying is it was rigged. Because you technically didn't top 8 and then you won the tournament.
I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. Just that I won.
Coin Concede conspiracy theories.
Yeah. I mean,
one person just happened to not show up for the top 8 to be able to
Coin
participate in the
conspiracy
top 8.
theories.
Yeah.
I promise that any effort I would have spent on engineering something would not be on first place or top 8 in a for free, no prize podcast casual listener series. I would have gone for way higher stakes. So, no, I think it was legitimate. I just playing Mech Paladin against Warrior feels like cheating. So I see where you're getting. So it's been a good week. And we actually have a ton to talk about because this news section does not fit on a single page. So why don't we jump right into it?
So some of the listeners might be wondering, what the heck happened to the single player content? Because we haven't got our single player content yet, and it's been a couple weeks with a new set, and I don't even know if we really know what it's going to be. So we finally got an announcement that next week on Thursday, May 9th, they're going to have a video where the mission designer Giovanni Scarpati, is going to kind of go over all of the things that are to come with the single player content. It sounds like it will have a launch date fairly soon for it, and so for those of you who are looking to do single player stuff, I've really enjoyed the single player stuff they've done for the past how long's it been? Almost a little over a year and a half, right? The first major one was Knights of the Frozen Throne, I believe. That's when they started doing it.
Well, okay, so are you including adventures?
I wasn't. I guess they're going back to those, right?
Yeah, because the way
So-
they're talking about it, they're selling it for the price that adventures used to go for, and they're saying there's a ton to do. I would guess the experience here would be comparable to an adventure if I had to guess, which was the last one was Karazhan, which was, gosh, mid 2016. Yeah, that was
Long time ago.
that was almost 3 years ago now. They did do an adapted content for Knights of the Frozen Throne, and then the dungeon run for kobolds. And yeah, we haven't. I think that the level they're talking about doing this will probably be more on par with Karazhan or League of Explorers.
That's pretty interesting. Wasn't Karazhan very similar to um, Knights of the Frozen Throne, except that Karazhan you had to pay gold or money to unlock
No,
it, and
no. There's a lot of there's a lot of themed bosses. There wasn't the 9 thing at the end. Karazhan was easier because League of Explorers was hard, and BRM and Nax, if we go back further, those were not messing around, especially on heroic. Those were hard. So,
yeah.
Karazhan, I remember being fairly easy to complete, somewhat similar to Frozen Throne. I mean, Appa, do you remember playing these adventures? I feel like that Frozen Throne had a little bit less going on because it was free.
Frozen Throne actually kind of difficult because you had to beat online classes to get Arthas, right?
Well, but the before you got to Arthas, like the wings, there were a couple different wings of
Oh,
that
I
you
don't
fought through.
remember them too
Yeah,
well.
it was.
Yeah.
It
I
was
just
three
remember.
three
I remember
wings of
it
3
got-
bosses.
I remember it got pretty hard, and then somebody figured out you could just jam Murlocs in a deck and just roll over the hard
Yeah.
ones. But
Or
other
Barnes
than
and
that,
Visarge and Barnes Visarge and Ragnaros too.
yeah.
Wasn't
Yeah.
the other way.
And I mean the Arthas challenge specifically was meant to take forever, and it really did, and it was not super pleasant. I guess actually the largest single volume of single player content we actually got was Puzzle Lab, because there was a lot of content there. It just wasn't the same format, so it's kind of hard to evaluate. But in terms of just things to do, I think that was the most out of any single player content, even including the
That one-
adventures.
That one was really fun. I like
Yeah.
that one a lot.
And there was a ton to do. It took a while to get through it.
Yeah, and the first time Dungeon Run came out, that felt like a lot of fun. You could put a good bit of time into that if you wanted to, but who knows what they're gonna do with it with this one? We'll find out on May 9th probably. Let's see. The next news item we have here is that there will be no Blizzard presence at Gamescom. They're giving a reason of focusing more on development as kind of part of their renewed effort, as they put it this year, to focus on development and make sure they're putting together, the best game they can. So I don't know. This is a pretty interesting announcement. I don't know. Do you guys think this is a necessary announcement to kind of say that they're not going to be there and why? Or I don't know. What is your guys' take on this announcement?
This is a big show. This is like the Gen Con of Europe, I think, would be the way I'd compare it. And historically, they'd had almost a mini BlizzCon-esque presence. It's a little weird that they're not going. Like, I get that there's probably not a huge return on investment for them, but it's kind of sending a strange message that are the people that were going to the shows before the ones that were developing the games? Maybe, like maybe the senior directors, but I feel like if you have a small presence there, maybe people talk about that negatively, but making it clear you're going to have no presence at all is kind of alarmingly different.
I mean, like, how long does this last? Is it just a weekend?
Yeah, it's Wednesday, August 21st to Saturday, August 24th.
Like, how much is that realistically cutting into like development time? I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I'm gonna like keep myself not flustered. I'm gonna not be flustered here, but I will say that this sounds like an excuse. Not a very positive view of Blizzard right now, which we'll get into in a second. But this feels like, I don't know, I like 3 days of potential development time if the major developers, like the big people working on your projects, are going. Like 3 days seems like not a big deal to interact with the community that you built up. And
So I
don't
dug
know.
a little deeper. There are two important facts. One, I underestimated the size of Gamescom. E3 last year did 70,000 people. Gamescom did 370,000. It is the largest trade show in the industry. Two, Blizzard said in February this year that they would have no major frontline releases in this calendar year of any of their products. So they're probably not going because they have no marquee title.
That makes sense.
But it
Which-
sucks.
Which
But it
is
makes sense.
weird
Yeah.
that they're
That's,
saying we're not going because we're developing, but we're also not announcing anything.
Didn't really announce anything at this last BlizzCon that we were all at. They had
announced
Diablo Immortal.
Warcraft 3,
and-
and then Vanilla, right?
Yeah.
They
But we
said
already kind of knew about Vanilla.
Yeah.
Vanilla was something that was kind of already a known presence, and
Yeah, we were like expecting
remastering
that. I think
something.
Warcraft 3 was the big thing.
yeah, but that's
And-
still a
and
re-release
Immortal.
of a 25-year or like a 20-year-old game. It's
Yeah.
not. They didn't call it a frontline release. They announced that they were not coming out with any major titles this year on the same
Yeah,
earnings
it's not
call
like a-
as the day of the layoffs, where they also said we expect materially lower financial performance this year. So they're planning. They're tightening the belt because they know they're not going to make as much money because they've made some unpopular decisions and they're not putting out marquee releases of any of their properties. So the biggest game they will have this year is probably Warcraft 3 Reforged, and I would call that generally more niche, even if it's going to be amazing and I'm going to play the hell out of it because I'm in the niche.
Yeah, I'm still really looking forward to Diablo Immortal. I kind of wish there was more information coming out about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that to come out because it was a lot of fun at BlizzCon. Like,
Yeah.
it got some of the most negative reviews from people, but like, I played it, and I just want my hands on that game.
I really hope it comes out like a month before the new Hearthstone set comes out. Just right towards the very tail end where maybe we're getting slightly bored with the meta, maybe, hopefully not, but at a point where it doesn't feel like it's still so fresh, and I just kind of want to still be playing it right now. But I mean, no major releases makes sense for not going there, but if there's no major releases this year, it makes me pretty excited about our next news item, which is BlizzCon is going to be returning. They finally announced it. It's coming. Tickets are going to be on sale May 4th and May 8th. The ticket prices have increased a little bit, up an additional $30 US, and there is also a new ticket type called the Portal Pass for $550 USD. The Portal Pass is going to include everything that the normal BlizzCon Pass gets you, with additionally access to a night at the fair, which is a special event taking place on October 31st in the convention at the Darkmoon Fair, preferential parking, which sounds pretty cool based on having parked out there before, and that's not that's not too much fun. And then faster security and registration lines, a dedicated lounge to hang out with in the convention center, and early access to the convention on Friday and Saturday morning. So if you want to beat the crowd, if you really value your time and you have a bit of extra money lying around, it seems worth it. But
A bit. It's
yeah,
at the low price
A
of an
lot-
additional
okay, a lot of extra money.
$320. An additional $320 on top of your $230, plus your hotel room and your flight and food while you're there. You get to go to a Halloween party and park faster.
and get to the convention earlier and not have to wait through lines.
Oh,
Look,
yes.
It probably
just get a
saves
lift.
you.
Just get lifts from your hotel rooms, and then you'll have crazy stories like me and Hat.
Oh, Larry. Oh, Larry.
Larry.
Look,
well, that's-
I'm just trying to
we're
say
making a
that
deep cut.
it probably saves you like 6 hours.
How long did you wait in security? 6
Every
hours?
day. You wait every day in security, right? I don't know. It could save you. It feels like it, depending on how you want to experience BlizzCon, this could be an option for you, but is obviously not going to be an option for me. I don't know that it's worth it based on my current situation, but I think I'm still going to try to get tickets.
Yeah.
I know that some other people that I might be talking to right now are not in the same camp, but I'm hoping that there are going to be a ton of releases, and based on what I've heard, it's usually you have BlizzCons that don't have a lot of big announcements, followed by big BlizzCons with lots of announcements. So this seems like it could be a year where there's a lot of big announcements, and I would like to try to be there for it.
Yeah, they'll for sure announce the next World of Warcraft expansion. That is 100% happening because that's every other year. And the the Halloween party with the devs and the lounge with the devs sounds like the best reason to get this portal pass. But $550 for one person is just a lot of money. I get that there are increasing costs to the event. I just don't think it's a great look to lay off a ton of people and announce you're not coming out with new games this year and bail on somebody else's show because you have nothing to show, and then throw your own show and charge people more. Seems kind of a weird combination of things to do. At the same time, if I was not paying for a wedding this year, I would get tickets. So I don't want to say that my moral high ground is so high that I'm looking down on these tickets like, I would never do that. I would absolutely do that. I'm just getting married instead. And I can't do both Italy and BlizzCon. I'm choosing Italy. You want to pay for me to go to this one, Botticus? I can do both if you finance me.
I mean, we'll see what my finances look like.
You don't have to commit me now. It's later. We'll talk after the show.
Yeah, we'll talk later.
Yeah. But I do think that it's not the best look, but I also think that BlizzCon will be fine. I'm glad they're still doing it. It's just weird optics.
Yeah, so I won't be going this year for different reasons from Hat. So the first year I went to BlizzCon was 2 years ago, and it was a lot of fun. They had a really cool tavern set up with like benches, and they had live music, and they had some artists in there who did artwork for the game, and you could get like autographed artwork, and devs were in there. You could play like, I think Hat and I played Hearthstone Battleship or something, and there was a lot of other cool stuff there. There was like the stage for HGG and like the caster table, and then they also had the expansion stuff you could try out. But this past year, they got rid of the tavern altogether, and they still had the HGG stage. And to be completely honest, I don't care at all about HGG. It's not interesting to me at all. And I know some people, like other people, like it, but I'm not one of those people. It's not my cup of tea. And all we really had was the demo for Rosticon's Rumble, where you got to play with some of the cards in there. And I mean, that was fine, but for me, it was really disheartening. It was a really big step down from my first year going. And I know Botticus last year, that was your first time going. So for you, I'm sure it was completely fine. But for me, it was just like, oh, wow, this is a really big step down. And I liked the Diablo stuff a lot. They actually moved a lot of the stuff that they had for the tavern towards the show floor for Diablo, and they had like an inn there, set up like Diablo themed. I don't really care too much about WoW. I mean, I play it like every now and then. I'll like re-up on my subscription for a month, but like I'm not into it super heavily by any means. I do like Overwatch a ton. If it was just me going, I would probably go just for the Overwatch World Cup because that's a lot of fun. But whenever I go with Taylor, and she doesn't care about Overwatch. So it felt like they scaled down a lot last year, and it was kind of disheartening for me. And I mean, there's just been a bunch of stuff that I've disagreed with that the company's done recently that I don't really want to go this year. I mean, I'm sure they'll have some cool announcements, but from my first year going to last year, seemed like a step down. And then with all this other stuff that they're doing on tightening the belt and everything, I wouldn't expect it to like blow me out of the water this year. So I mean, not probably, I definitely won't be going, but I mean, I definitely don't fault anybody for it. It's just that I mainly go for Hearthstone, and it seems like they scaled that back. And I mean, Hearthstone in general got scaled back in terms of like esports team and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's particularly for me this year. But I mean, for people that are interested in like WoW, Diablo, Warcraft, Starcraft, Overwatch in particular, I think if you're super into Overwatch, that's definitely a reason to go. But for me, it's the Hearthstone portion of it really bummed me out last year.
Well, and I think the first time we went up was 2 years ago. That was the first BlizzCon for both of us. And I think it was kind of a fascinating realization when you go to BlizzCon that Blizzard is a World of Warcraft company that makes other games. They're not a games company. And WoW was 100% center stage at all times because it's absolutely their biggest product. And that was the first year, was also the year of the BFA announcement. And that expansion for WoW, the cinematic was revealed there, and it was amazing. It was so good that first Battle for Azeroth cinematic got everybody hyped about playing WoW, and you could play like the first couple missions, but it wasn't received all that well when it came out. And last year was also a very transitional time for the company because Mike Morhaime was leaving and J. Allen Brack was coming in, and it was kind of a weird vibe. It just, something was a little bit different than what I remember. Might be that Botticus was inside instead of, pressing his face against the glass, hoping for a ticket. But I think it was also likely the changing of the guard, and the Hearthstone presence was definitely pared down. I bet it'll be great this year, because I bet they're going to have stuff to announce for next year, and the conclusion of the Year of the Dragon will come up, and it'll be climactic and all that. But also, we got to see Ben Brodes last year. How are you ever going to come close to that?
I was about to say, I think we were spoiled the first year.
Absolutely spoiled.
The crowd chanting for us to kill ourselves, basically.
It's just, we had to choose between, like, a door covered in fire or a door that says certain death, and everyone was just like, death, death, death. And it was absurd, and it was a really great experience. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hearthstone is in a much better place this year. It's more than a year after Brode left, when last year they're still kind of picking themselves back up. It's after a bunch of development money will be sunk into it. I think they'll have a more stabilized vision. I bet it'll be better. but last year was disappointing, and this year is expensive. And I'm taking a year off for external reasons, but I totally understand anyone that wants to take a step back and see what happens. I think this is a
Yeah.
great year for the virtual ticket for us, and a watch
Yeah,
party
I'll be
maybe.
getting the virtual ticket for sure because, I mean, aside from getting to see all the stuff, you get the in-game perks everywhere. But yeah, I think the thing I'm gonna miss the most is hanging out with y'all because that was the most fun I had both years.
What, bananas
Yeah,
and then
that's one of
burgers on
the-
roller skates?
Yes.
That's definitely one of the biggest detracting factors, honestly, for me. Because if both of you guys were going, I wouldn't even think twice about getting a ticket. But there's still going to be other people that I really want to see there, and some other people that I know are planning on going that I want to meet for the first time. So I still want to try to get a ticket, and also the investment for me is just so much significantly less than it is for you guys because you live so much farther away, and I can just drive there. So it makes a lot more sense for me to still try to go this year. But who knows? We'll see if I can even get a ticket. Honestly, we'll see how all that goes. But hopefully, if you're a listener and you're going, and you want to meet me, hit me up because that'll get me more excited to go.
Yes. Please make Botticus want to meet you. That is what he's asking for.
Well, you didn't have to put it like that, Hat.
I mean, you didn't have to ask our listeners to make you more excited. Just be like, I'm already excited to meet you. Just
Well,
say,
I am excited to meet. What? I'm confused. I probably missed.
just say,
Let's just
listen,
move on.
I need justification to spend the money because I really want to go. That's what you say.
No, I don't need justification. I
Never
don't
mind.
know.
I'm editing this out. Just keep going.
Okay, good. Uh, so there was a new animated short that came out that I have not had a chance to see yet. Hopefully, one of you two have.
Didn't you watch Worlds? It was on like in between every single match.
Oh, I did not pay attention when Hearthstone was not being played.
I believe.
Yeah,
the Worlds.
same. I watched it, but I didn't hear it. So I just saw the visuals, but I didn't hear anything.
Well, it was
and I
the
feel like I
really
missed out on a
grumpy
significant
elf.
part.
It was a really grumpy night elf with, or a blood elf. I think a blood elf. Really grumpy blood elf with a golden card back, and played against the guy that from the first Hearthstone short that was really like big and burly and also super friendly. And it's like, well met, friend. How about a
I know
game?
he slammed down Murloc Raiders every turn.
Yep, ton of Murlocs, and they made little Myrtle noises, and then the snooty like tryhard blood elf kept playing all these kill spells, and then top decked and won, and it was super adorable. Not this is not deep level content, but if you haven't seen it, it's 2.5 minutes. Go watch it with the sound on and enjoy yourself. It is fun.
All right, I will do that after the cast.
This is not world shattering. It's just fun.
Okay. Well, that's good. Usually these things are really well produced. Blizzard has done a really good job of producing just different visual content in general.
If the
One of the big reasons to go to BlizzCon because you get obviously you can see it with the virtual ticket, but seeing it live is also kind of crazy.
if they
All
made a
the
movie
cinematics.
out of the Overwatch shorts, I would pay full price. Just make a movie out of the
Yeah.
Overwatch shorts.
All right. Let's see. The next news item is that r/Hearthstone is up to 1 million subs. Holy cow, that is a lot of people. And they're doing a giveaway. So if you have a Reddit account and you want to win some Hearthstone swag, we have a link in the show notes where you can go win some stuff. Let's see, what do they have? They have, I believe it was a hoodie. You can win the Art of Hearthstone book, a woman's wallet, men's wallet, a scarf, and a t-shirt are all different items you can win uh, by entering this giveaway. So
This ends today. I'm editing it out. Just keep going.
okay, bye. Uh, let's see. And then the last two items we have on here, they did a IGN interview with a bunch of different pros. We have Just Sam, Bunny Hopper, and Ike. Were all interviewed with their thoughts on kind of the meta, where they think it's at, and if they think any cards should be nerfed. So we have that linked in the show notes. Was there any information in here you found interesting, Appa, about their thoughts on the format?
I actually haven't gotten a chance to read this. I just saw basically the bullet points that had put down here. I mean, we'll get into it a lot later because it's what our decksplanations is going to be, is talking about stuff in the format. But I mean,
Yeah, I linked
Yeah,
it
there's-
specifically because our explanation's about nerfs and kind of seeing where people are at. I think the thing that really stood out at me was what Bunny Hopper said, because he wants Edwin to get nerfed. He said the only thing holding back Magic Carpet is Rogue and Warrior being a little too powerful, and he wants it to be changed before Grandmasters, because he said directly, if Grandmaster were to start right now, it'd be like 12 Rogue and 4 Warrior, and nobody wants to watch that. And I think that's fascinating.
We'll have to see if anybody wants to watch Specialist, because have we even had a broadcasted Specialist tournament, like a big broadcasted Specialist
Yeah, you
tournament
did one
yet?
before the show.
also full disclosure, I was totally watching that short, and it's adorable.
I told you.
I watched it in the span that it took for you to talk about the article. And then,
See?
yeah, it's good.
Yes. It's so little time commitment, everyone should go out and watch and then feel slightly happier than they did before. Okay, last news
yeah.
item. Speaking of not
Alright,
being
fine.
happy.
Poor Osaka. Let's see. So
So do you know the story,
I-
Botticus?
you just-
Do you know the story?
I don't. You just tell it. I'm sorry.
Okay. There's an alleged rumor that was shared in the German broadcast of HCT Worlds that Ostkaka had received an invite to Vegas and didn't check his email and instead played in almost 50 Open Cups and found out at Worlds that he was invited. This turned out to be inaccurate because it wasn't an invite to Vegas, it was a conversation about Grandmasters, which is way worse. So he posted Twit longer about it. The meat of the story there is that Blizzard sent him a couple emails, one on Valentine's Day, February 14th, one on February 19th, saying, we want to have a conversation with you. You sign an NDA so we can have this talk. Fill out this form and make time for us. 5 days later, they said, if you want to have this conversation, now is the time. I'm summarizing, but they weren't able to get into what they were talking about. And it was apparently a conversation about Grandmasters, where they also, while they were deliberating on who was going to get into Grandmasters, they were going to give him an invite to Vegas so that he wouldn't play in Open Cups if he was potentially going to be a GM. Instead, Ostkaka said, and I quote, that, make sure I get this exactly. I want to make sure I get this exactly right. I assumed at least all the playoff players received this email, and I had already heard a lot of rumors and leaks about the 2019 format, so I didn't think the call was worth the time. Now, he played in qualifiers for 2 months after that. 48 Open Cups, which is assuming an average of probably, assuming he 0-2'd or like 1-2'd or whatever in half of them. So we take the 12 to 15 hour length of the top 8 and cut that in half. Let's say it's something like 6 hours per cup. Let's be charitable. That's something in the neighborhood of 300 hours spent on a tournament that he had an invite for. At the same time, if he got the emails and just straight up did not respond, I don't get that. But whatever the deal is here, Blizzard reached out. They tried to get in touch with him. Ostkaka did allege that Blizzard directly contacted other players that didn't respond by pinging them in non-email fashions, like on Twitter or Discord. He specifically mentioned Firebat and Frozen, who are in Grandmasters. And he says, I really don't feel too bad about the outcome, but Blizzard should have reached out to me separately. And he is not qualified for Vegas now or the Grandmasters. Kind of a dagger.
Feels bad.
Yeah.
Is it an oiled up dagger?
It was once
Is that
upon
what
a
it means,
time, but is
Ostkaka?
now rusty. Is now a rusty. It is no longer a sharp sword. It is a tinker's dull sword oil. It feels bad. At the same time, I would think that as an esports professional, that I would go out of your way to respond to emails from the Blizzard esports team, but I'm not in his situation. I don't know what exactly happened.
Yeah, it depends on how many emails he's getting from the Blizzard team. I assume they're not very common, but I've definitely gotten emails from people and deleted them because I assumed that they were just another random email and I was supposed to have read them. So I can kind of see his point of view, and it really depends on yeah, it just kind of depends on the situation. Basically, sucks for him. Sucks we're not going to see him in Grandmasters, but I guess that's what you get for not checking your emails. And just don't have a lot more to say about it than that. So kind of an interesting news week, bunch of information coming out there, but really what I think we're all excited about talking about would be the next section, which is the tournament section, because boy howdy did we have an exciting tournament this last weekend.
It's the grand tournament!
So, Botticus, I don't know if you were watching live. I know you and I were watching live multiple days in a row, right? When was the last time that you watched this much broadcast Hearthstone as it was live? Because for me, it's been a long time.
It was last year's Worlds.
Okay.
Because I remember watching Frozen get high rolled out of his mind and being very upset. But yeah, other than that, I haven't watched very much Hearthstone the past year. But this Worlds was insane. It was so much fun to watch.
Every single match. Every single match.
It's the best spectator experience for Hearthstone I've ever seen.
Yeah. Like, WSOE had the production value down, and I do think it was better produced than this. Especially the first WSOE 2, I guess. The one that had 16 players. But as far as the game of Hearthstone as something I wanted to watch, it was definitely nowhere near this. Because this format is perfect for Conquest, and it's not the official format anymore. If only this amazing format was official. But still, it was super duper fun to watch, and I loved the timing of how it was about 2 weeks after the set came out. Nobody knew it was good yet except for Rogue and Warrior. And even the people that knew it was good, some of the people had different ideas on how to implement that, and you got to see some weird stuff like the Viper and Bunny Hopper lineup, which had no Warrior and Miracle Rogue, specifically to target Warrior, was fascinating. The diversity of Shaman builds was really, really interesting. The fact that Zoo was so prevalent was really unusual.
Yeah, I think the biggest talking point from Worlds in general in terms of like deck strength is how poorly Zoo performed. It lost so many games at Worlds. It could not close out series to save its life.
Yeah, well, and one of the key talking points of the event ended up being one card in Zoo. Archvillain Rafam.
Oh man, that Twitter thread was a meme.
There were a couple Twitter threads, and there was a storyline getting played up during Worlds where Sottle was talking crap about Archthief Rafam because he said he'd never seen it win a game, and it just looked like a 7-drop that clogged the hand, and that ended up kind of starting a Twitter sparring match between him and the head of Vicious Syndicate, who said you need to play that card because in a Warrior matchup it brings you from a 10% win rate to a 30% win rate, which is still bad, but still 3 times as good. And that segued somehow into a discussion about Sottle's casting techniques. And it got dramatic. It's fine. The point here is, after that thread, whenever the casters had to talk about Archthief Rafam, it was really interesting listening to them try and thread the needle there. And it did lead to some very entertaining games. But I didn't see it win on camera.
I was also taught an entirely new phrase that I did not know existed in the English language for British English, which was Sottle telling somebody to, quote, get in the bin. And I'm so glad I know that phrase because that's definitely part of my vocabulary from now on.
Yeah, it's so somehow Archthief Rafam became the card of the tournament that people talked about whenever it came on stream. In the final game of the tournament, it was kept in the opening hand. So let's talk about the tournament. Hunter Ace won. Hunter Ace, the world champion. In case
Wow.
you haven't been listening,
Who could have guessed
yeah.
that?
In case you
How
haven't
did-
been listening to the
How
show,
did none of us picked him, right?
it was almost too
As our
obvious.
champion?
If I wasn't gonna pick Killen all day because of the sweet priest deck, I for sure would have picked Hunter Ace.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
had to root for Nomi Priest. I mean, come on.
So I do know one person that picked Hunter Ace, and it was when I was on the Blizzlet episode that I was on a couple weeks ago. We talked co-host Jack Johnson into picking Hunter Ace, and he didn't want to, but we told him he's just the best player. He's period. He's just the best player, period. And I think he chose Hunter Ace, and we just kind of tricked him into picking the winner of the tournament.
You sure showed him. Yeah,
It's
but
okay. My champion got second.
yeah, my champion lost in deciders. So Hunter Ace won. Viper came in second. Played against his countryman and testing partner Bunny Hopper in third. SN Jing in fourth. Language Hacker, Just Saying, LFU Ying, and Bloodyface rounded out the top 8. Really, really great tournament to watch, and the meta was fascinating. So the obvious thing is that there were 15 of 16 players playing Rogue, except for Roger. Every single one played Edwin. 15 Edwins and 15 Rogue decks. There were 13 Warriors. All of them played Boom. Except for the only players that didn't play it were Bunny Hopper and Viper, and then one other player didn't have it. Language Hacker didn't have it. And all those Warriors played Dr. Boom. They all played Dynomatic. They all played Omega Assembly. There were 11 Zoos. Warlock was the third most popular class, which is very different from Specialist, because of the ban. And the ban matters so much with Zoo. There were 8 Hunters. They were all mid-range. 7 Book Mages. And Book Mage was kind of the talk of the tournament because it performed really, really well against a lot of these lineups. It was an incredibly powerful anti-warrior deck, and really overall I think was the highest performing single archetype, because usually Rogue or Warrior got banned. Those are the best decks, and Mage was the best one left over. There were 6 Shamans, and there was no consistency here. They're all weird. Really, really weird. Mostly tending towards control, except for A83650, who had a token Shaman Bloodlust deck that was strange, but I think is a good deck. I think is a really good deck. 2 Token Druids, 1 Nomi Priest, hashtag Yokad, and 1 Mega Greedy Roger Paladin. Out of the 64 decks that were played in total, there were 31 Ziliaxes, 19 Leroys, and 16 Harrisons. The most popular epics and rares, see if you can guess which classes these belong to. Prep, Brawl, Wagglepick, Shield Slam, SI7, Dynomatic, Omega Assembly, and Raiding Party. Who would have guessed?
Did I hear? Was there a weapon?
I will
in that?
mute you so fast that you will end up on Blizzlet.
Waggly pick.
And then the
That wasn't
win.
me. That was Appa.
I know who was. The winning lineup was Bookmage, Burgle Tempo Rogue, Control Shutterwalk Shaman that had an anti-aggro tech, including Ancestral Healing, and Bomb Warrior. Second place, Mid-Range Hunter, Bookmage, Tempo Rogue, and Zoo. 2 of the top 4 lineups were the German non-warrior lineup, the one with Mid-Range Hunter, Bookmage, Tempo Rogue, and Zoo. They played each other in the semis, so they could not both meet in the finals. And it was a really fascinating pick because the Rogue was teched so differently than what we've seen. That was the Miracle Rogue deck with Wanted in it, and it did really, really well against Warrior consistently.
And Togwaggle scheme.
And the
And
scheme.
no weapon.
And no weapon. No raiding
weapons,
party.
No raiding parties.
Yep.
I wanted to touch on the Shaman decks a little bit because they look really bizarre in the abstract. If you just look at them and you're like, what are these 30 cards and how do they win games? Most of the Shaman lists, except for A8s, I think, were all specifically teching against Token Druid primarily, and then also like that gives you like some splash tech as well against Zoo. Like Hunter Aces in particular, he ran Wild Pyro and Ancestral Healing. The Ancestral Healing is not to like restore health to your Walking Fountain whenever you play it, which is what it frequently did. It's supposed to be used in tandem with Wild Pyromancer to get an extra tick off of the Wild Pyro. So you play Wild Pyro, play a spell, Ancestral Healing, and then play another spell, and then you clear the 1/1s off of Whispering Woods, and then you get to clear off the Soul of the Forest afterwards. And that's what that package was in the deck for. But I think there was only one token druid, right?
There were two token
that's right.
druids total. And yeah, and the shamans were different too, because Hunter Race did not play Elysiana, because he was planning on banning Warrior. But a lot of the shaman decks included Elysiana, and they were planning on banning Rogue. It's a very different take that some of the shaman decks were definitely meant to outlast control. Hunter Race was not that. Hunter Race was meant to deal with aggressive strategies.
And honestly, I think that's the smarter decision because I've played a good amount of Control Shaman, and the Warrior matchup, even when you have Elysiana in your deck and you can Elysiana Shudderwalk Elysiana, the Warrior can just sometimes get out ahead of you because
Yeah,
all of their
we'll actually talk about that in the games to watch. But yeah, like if they get tempo on you, it's kind of hard to come back, especially if they have boom.
Well, because all of their removal are minions, and most of your removal is spells, because you're relying on Hagatha, they're relying on getting mechs from Dr. Boom and Omega Assembly. So generally, when you have somebody that just gets to play minions and can use them as removal versus somebody who just has to play spells, spells can be dead. Minions are almost always very useful. So I like Hunter Ace's thought process there. Obviously, he's super bright when it comes to Hearthstone strategy, but that was just a really good plan, I think, in general.
It worked out. He is the world champion. So I agree with you. I think it was a good plan. And
I wanted there's one deck archetype which I don't really get, and I think you guys probably watched more. This is definitely the most live Hearthstone that I've watched in a really long time, probably since last Worlds, but in general, mid-range Hunter, that deck seems bad to me. I've played a little bit of it, and I've seen it play out, and obviously there are games where it kind of crushes your opponent. It can put them in awkward spots, but in overall, just kind of in general looking at it, it has not felt powerful enough of a deck to include in a lineup. But obviously, a lot of people brought it.
Yeah, I think that was just a symptom of looking for a fourth deck. And I mean, the deck's it's like okay on its own. It's not fantastic. Like it has great draws. It has Master's Call, which is one of the most powerful cards, just like pound for pound in the format. And we saw that last meta, like Master's Call was kind of carrying Hunter along with Razormaw, Diremaul, and Rexar, obviously. But I mean, I think it makes sense for the competitors to bring it just as a fourth deck, just because it does have really strong draws, and then it has a reasonable game against Warrior, which a lot of them are expecting. I think multiple people brought double Dire Frenzy lists to the tournament to try and grind out Warrior. But yeah, it didn't perform super well. It's interesting that they had to submit their decks when they did, because I think if the competitors could go back and like redo it, a lot of them would probably bring the Mech Hunter version, because that one's just really good.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That seems just like a superior option in most cases.
so it hadn't been discovered yet, and the mid-hunter lists that we see, especially the ones that performed well in the hands of the Germans, those were teched for Ban Rogue, and they had double Master's Call, double Dire Frenzy, but also something that Language Hacker was talking about when he was interviewed, and his lineup didn't have Warrior and had mid-range Hunter and Controlling Shaman. They were targeting Token Druid and expecting a much larger percentage of Token Druid in the tournament. And Language Hacker said he was beating it so well in testing with his lineup that 2 days before the tournament, he was like, what if everyone else is also beating it? Because just susceptible to more refined deck lists, and it's not the target. And that's what ended up happening. So his lineup was not well situated for the tournament because he was meant to dumpster Token Druid, and everyone else realized, hey, that deck doesn't win that much when we play these Conquest lineups. It doesn't beat Zoo. It doesn't really beat Warrior as consistently as it needs to be in a target Warrior lineup. And it doesn't beat Coin Miscreant. So, not being able to beat those things, mid-range Hunter...
Not a lot beats Coin Miscreant.
But Token Druid in particular is really vulnerable to it, and mid-range Hunter gets to play Unleash the Hounds and really punish everything that Token Druid is doing. So it's a symptom of that in Ban Rogue lineups, where you also get to target Warrior with double Tundra Rhino, double Dire Frenzy, double Master's Call, and Zul'jin with Unleash the Beasts, you get to really just load up your deck with gas and draw it and just keep constant pressure on the opponent, and that's kind of what happened pretty consistently. Oh, this is my section.
But yeah.
Yeah, so
just a great tournament. Really, like just it was so much fun to watch. I didn't get to catch the finals live, but I watched them today, and holy cow, that last game. Just like the whole series was insane, and then that last game, you could just feel the tension because the winner wins everything, and just draw step after draw step of just crazy draws was just a real treat to be able to watch.
Yeah, I was talking about this game in the tournament chat along while it was being played, and I think Lost Head was the only one in there who was kind of agreeing with me as well, and we're both competitive players, so it makes sense. And I wanted to talk about this just a little bit before we move on to like the games to watch and all that stuff. But I want to preface this by saying this is the most fun I've ever had watching Hearthstone be played, and I think this is probably the best tournament in terms of spectator experience that's probably ever been played for Hearthstone. But I was also very concerned for just kind of the esports side of it in general. I was mostly concerned that if Viper won, it would give like a bad look to Hearthstone esports because he kept Rafam in the mulligan, and that ended up being pretty much the only relevant thing he did that game was play Rafam on 7, and then didn't get there with the legendaries because he low rolled some of them. But it like if he would have won, I can put myself in the shoes of being either a competitive player or like an organization owner whose player qualified for one of these majors and trying to justify like sending them, and then looking at Game 5 of Worlds being decided by Rafam, just being like, am I really going to spend hundreds of dollars to send one of my players to one of these events if it's going to come down to this kind of stuff? But also on the flip side of that, Hunter Ace still won, and it shows just consistency throughout the year. But just like the sheer amount of randomly generated stuff was just like, this isn't a great look for people who are trying to like send people to tournaments looking for a return on investment out of like prizes, was the thing that was just like kind of like making me cringe a little bit. But other than that, it was fantastic. It was so much fun to watch.
Well, and the top 4 of the tournament had Viper, Hunter Ace, Bunny Hopper, Jing. You can't really argue against the consistent skill of those players and their consistent results. They've been playing super well all year. And Hunter Ace, 99% of other players in Game 1 or Game 5 would have lost. Hunter Ace conserved his stuff so well.
Wow, that guy is good. That guy is so freaking good. It's actually unreal.
Yeah. And we'll talk about some of those plays. I understand the trepidation, but this feels more like a Lee Starseeker to me than Yogg-Saron. And Yogg-Saron was just
for sure.
undo everything
else. It's not just like play this, have all these random cards, you can't do anything. It's just one of those things where I was like, maybe not a good look. But of course, there's like things on both sides, and I think at the end of the day, we saw just the sheer consistency of these players be rewarded through everything throughout the entire year and throughout the tournament. So yeah, I think overall this was very good for Hearthstone as a game.
Yep.
But also, like, if you're a sponsor trying to send somebody to a tournament, the reason for sending them to the tournament is that it's going to get a lot of eyeballs, and you're going to get a lot of people wanting to watch, and it's going to be exciting, and people are going to want to see your brand in exciting games. So in that sense, it's pretty exciting as a brand to have the opportunity to send somebody to an event that's potentially going to get a lot more eyeballs. And since we have so many conquest tournaments coming up where we have potential for that to happen, then
there's certainly a lot to unpack there on like both sides of that like little fence there. It was just something interesting that I was talking about in the Discord, and I know Lost Head was agreeing with me a little bit, but I think that's just because we come from like the competitive mindset, like first and foremost. But taking myself out of that and putting myself as a spectator, it's like, give me more of this. I don't care. This is awesome.
Well, and also there's a pretty significant investment in keeping that Rafam card in your mulligan. I think that's a decision that most players also would not have made because it's a 7-drop, and you're a zoo deck.
But also, it's in the deck for that matchup, right? It's in
Well,
the deck
yeah.
for the controlling long matchups.
Yeah, and you need it, but I think a lot of players might have also said, I will try and draw this later because I want to get my opening going faster. And Viper said, nope, going for it now. So anyways, it was interesting. It was fun. We'll talk about games to watch, but we also do want to talk about the Masters qualifiers this past week. We're going to give you a recap of the past 7 days, of all the decks that were played in the past 7 days. And generally, surprise, you want to play Rogue and Warrior. Those are the best decks. There are a couple under-the-radar decks I would definitely recommend checking out. The No Pros Here report, the meta report number 7, made by Ikuta Pasca and the team over there, and now Wicked Good is part of that. And they're working on getting some data engineering together. And thanks to Wicked Good's early work, we have the last 7 days worth of stats. And 1/3 of all decks played in all qualifiers were rogues. 34%. About 2/3 of those were the fast builds that were more aggressive. And about 1/3 of that, a little bit less than that, in fact, were the Vendetta builds. So definitely leaning more towards the aggressive style. Warrior was right behind it. About 1/4 of all decks, a split slightly favoring Control Warrior over Bomb Warrior, but Bomb Warrior's done a little bit better lately. 3rd place is Hunter, about 15% of all decks. Bomb is the most played archetype, slightly over Midrange Hunter, and Death Rattle is pretty far behind both. That deck is kind of dying out. 4th is Mage, 11% of all decks, and they're basically all Book Mage. And after that, we drop like a rock. Barely significant representation from other classes, a little bit of Token Druid, a little bit of Slower Shamans. By the way, the least represented class in Specialist is Warlock. Less than 2% of all decks. Paladin is slightly better, but not by much. And those are the 2 least played class in the meta. Priest is ahead because of Nomi Priest.
Priest is slightly above both of those.
Slightly, at 2.5%. Ooh. And as far as games to watch, I knew that when I was watching this tournament, I said, there is no way I can do my section. There are way too many games. So we picked a few. Honestly, game to watch, all of Worlds, but most people don't have 32 free hours to watch VODs, so we're going to narrow it down. I'm not even going to try and recap these games. Appa has 1 to recap because that's like 3 games in 1. It's a 3-for-1 deal. But there were a few particular series that were great. The first game in particular, the A83650 versus Just Saying Shaman Mirror. It ends with a Stormbringer into a Bloodlust. Really, really amazing to watch. That whole series was edge of your seat exciting. Bloody Face versus Viper. That was the Book Mage Mirror. And I will tell you, if you have never seen a Book Mage with a Houndmaster Shaw, that card is very good in that deck. Very, very good. Especially when you follow it up with a charging...
Getting to rush 8/8s and then make more 8/8s with rush is good.
That's what happened, and it was quite strong. It was very, very good. There was Hunter Race versus Bloody Face Game 4 in the quarterfinals, where I will say, if we want to talk about a player that got high-rolled, or that low-rolled themselves, Bloody Face in the quarterfinals got some of the worst luck I've ever seen. Until Game 4, because the end of Game 3 it looked like there was no chance he was getting there, but he triple eviscerated to the win. And then in Game 4, he ended up losing this game, and he was behind the whole game. And his only chance was to Khadgar Conjurer's Calling a 5-drop, which, as you know, is high risk, and there's usually a lot of low rolls. He got double Venture Co. Mercenary and double Witchwood Grizzly. And we had a ball game. But
Oh, really? Explain.
Yeah. Well, it is... Saddle asked Raven, is this literally the largest amount of stats you can generate off of calling for 5? And Raven said, I don't know, but I think so. And in that game, Raven's like, I'm just a spectator now. It just every time they drew a card, it's like, oh, and he's like, he just did what the crowd did. It was hilarious. It was amazing. And we're going to talk about the finals, but Appa has a little detour for us first. In the Language Hacker versus Muzzy decider game of Shaman versus Bomb Warrior. And I asked for a short highlight, and Appa wrote 4 paragraphs, so I'm going to let him talk.
This was as short as I could make it, okay? I started this recap at 38 minutes. So The most important stuff that happens in this game starts post 38 minutes. The only things you really need to know before that are Language Hacker used a hex in both Hagatha schemes, and that Muzzy knows that he has to play the matchup for tempo because he can't really outvalue Language Hacker Shaman because he has Elysiana, Hagatha, and Shutterwalk. So Muzzy plays in a way where he's trying to play for board and out-tempo him. So the first major decision that changes the course of the game is Language Hacker's decision to use his last hex on a 4/9 Dynamatic. And it's questionable, but he uses it, and after this hex, Muzzy knows that the coast is most likely clear. Language Hacker has a few Hagatha spells in his hand, but on average, it's pretty clear to start pushing tempo since both the schemes are gone and both the hexes are gone. So he has one card left in his deck, but he actually decides to tempo out an Elysiana to get the 7/7 on the board. He loses a little bit of value by not getting the maximum amount of cards, but he gets a 7/7 on the board, and he gets Heavy Metal, Shieldwind Yeti, Nozdormu, Light Warden, and Fire Tree Witch Doctor off of the Elysiana cards. Language Hacker follows up with an Elysiana of his own, which gives him Blazing Invocation, Bog Slosher, Sen'jin Shieldmaster, Scarlet Crusader, and Mogashan Warden. On Muzzy's next turn, he draws a Heavy Metal off the top and plays it. He's at like 20-something armor at this point, but it only goes up to 10. And he plays it, and it summons Hakar in the control mirror. And in the words of Brian Kibler, we have a Hearthstone game on our hands. Language Hacker spends his whole turn clearing off the Hakar, and Muzzy plays a Mechathune that he got off a delivery drone earlier on in the game. Language Hacker puts a taunt in the way, the Mogashan Warden that he got off Elysiana, and he plays an Ancestral Spirit on it, but Muzzy plays a Dynamatic and clears it off, and Shield Slams it and pushes some damage, and he finds a Boom Reaver off of Delivery Drone. And Language Hacker is forced to use a Shutterwalk to clear both players' boards and replace the Hakar, the Corrupted Bloods, with Bloodsail Corsair, Voltaic Burst, Witch's Apprentice, Henge Clan Sneak, and Tinkmaster Overspark. And then a few turns pass, not a ton happens. They both kind of go back and forth. Language Hacker manages to present a board for Voltaic Burst and a Stormbringer from Hagatha, while Muzzy keeps his hand full to burn the Corrupted Blood from his deck. He actively takes, like, I forget how much damage, but Language Hacker ends up giving an 8/8 Wind Fury, and Muzzy just takes that damage. He says, okay, keep my hand full. Burns Corrupted Blood off the top, so he doesn't have to worry about that anymore. And Muzzy presents a board with 2 Chillwind Yetis and 3 Microbots from the Dr. Boom Hero Power. Language Hacker plays Mossy Horror and plays the Evolve card from Hagatha, which gives him Prophet Velen, which he Ancestral Spirits. Muzzy clears Language Hacker's board. He has a Super Collider up, and Language Hacker played a Henge Clan Sneak, and he got a Heroic Strike somehow, I don't remember, but he Heroic Strikes and attacks the Velen into the Henge Clan Sneak, and then clears off the Velen that popped out from the Ancestral Spirit, and Muzzy draws another Heavy Metal, and he's at 10 armor, and he declines to play it because he realizes that one of the only ways he loses this game is if another Hakar comes out. So he says, I'm gonna hold on to this. So he Heavy Metals next turn with 8 armor and gets Tyrion! What's going on? What is happening in this game? Language Hacker plays Tinkmaster on an empty board other than Tyrion, and it turns it into a 5/5. So he's disappointed. Muzzy's high rolling right now. The game's insane. Muzzy clears Language Hacker's 3/3 and slams a Nozdormu, and Language Hacker's hopes in the game rely on Voltaic Burst and Stormbringer. He's out of cards in his deck. He has no more minions left for Hagatha. He plays Voltaic Burst and Stormbringer, and he gets the combo of Chameleos and Edmund Van Cleef. And that is the end of the game after 65 minutes.
Ugh. That was the 3rd Stormbringer that game. There were 3.
Yeah, it was insane. I think the only worst legendaries he could have gotten were Nat Pagal and Lore Walker Cho.
Yeah. Or like Thalnos.
Yeah, that would have been pretty bad too. But yeah, they were some low rolls. It was
Man, he needed to get another Hakar.
Clearly that was it.
I thought the recognition from Muzzy, where he's like, I don't want to take this chance on this Hakar. We'll just wait till 8.
No, just wait for Tyrion. It's fine. It was really something. And the last series we want to talk about is the finals. Now, if you are listening to this and you have not watched the finals yet, if there is one match of Hearthstone that you watched this year, it should be these 5 games. I know it will take a while. You should watch them. You're watching peak performance from the best in the game, not just now, but possibly ever. Playing a match that is full of both randomness that players respond to correctly and intuitively, and also really high-level precision play in absence of randomness. And I'm going to talk about what I mean by that in Game 1. Hunter Race is at 1 life as a rogue against Zoo, and he has an explosive trap against an Argent Squire, a Witchwood Imp, and a Flame Imp. The Witchwood Imp, if you don't remember, it's a 1/1 with stealth, that when it dies, it gives another minion +2 health. And Hunter Race has the only minion he can attack with is a 3/3 SI, and he has a backstab. The most efficient play is backstab the 4/3 Flame Imp and trade into the Argent Squire, and then you force the trade. Instead, Hunter Race attacks his 3/3 into the 4/3 Flame Imp and trades straight up, backstabs the Witchwood Imp, playing as though it's misdirection, making it very clear that his out is to the misdirection triggering, which causes Viper to play quickly. It's turn 7, and he has Rafam on 7, and instead, Viper says the way he's playing it has to be misdirection. I'm going to play a minion first and get the chance for lethal, and it was Explosive Trap. It's a Hunter secret. It's a rogue deck against a Warlock. And Viper played around misdirection so well that Hunter Race predicted he would play around misdirection out of his rogue deck and bluffed misdirection over Explosive Trap. That is the level of play we're talking about here, that your average player wouldn't have even seen what Viper saw to do against a Hunter secret. And Hunter Race knew that he would see it so well that he saw the code in the Matrix and set up a different play. It was insane.
These kind of bluffs, they're not going to work on ladder.
No.
Like these work against the best players in the world.
And this is the world champion making a read that his opponent is also so good that he's going to know inherently how to maximize his odds for lethal. So he masked the play. It was amazing to watch Hunter Race stabilize at 1 life, and the Explosive Trap is up, and he's making this play, and you can just see him clench. Just every single muscle in his body is as tightly wound as it can possibly get. He's like head in his hands. He's like, but you can't see me. It's your microphone. And he's just so wound up, and he somehow takes the game. Really, really exceptional play. Some randomness there, but he played his opponent into the randomness, and that was really incredible to me. As opposed to Game 5. Game 5. This is the Keeper Farm in the opener and play it on 7 game. I don't know how to describe this game. I don't really know what to say about it, other than... So Hunter Race is playing Control Shaman. And the Zoo deck, after running out of resources twice, draws Azalina 2 times. I have to click this link.
This is the best memes I saw all weekend.
Yeah. Viper plays a card and Hunter Race loses his mind. Yeah. So, twice, after being completely out of gas, Viper top decks Azalina and takes entire copy of Hunter Race's hand and has a Gruul in play and Hunter Race wants to play something big but knows Viper has a Hex and has to play around so many precise variables and keep track of so much information and ends up leaving Viper with a single large legendary and a Blood Mage Thalnos on no cards left in the deck. And you already know Hunter Ace is the world champion, but the way Game 5 played out, no one had any idea how it was going to go. No one had any idea.
Yeah, I think until Viper drew Blood Mage Thalnos, we thought it was anybody's game. But basically that last legendary minion not being like gas was really the decider there, because I think Hunter Ace was pretty much out of resources at that point, and Viper was too.
Yeah.
But man, it was close.
And usually the Shaman deck stabilizes and gets resources with Hagatha, the hero card. But Hagatha was the third to last card in Hunter Ace's deck. He didn't have it for the entire game. So normally that's how he wins, and that was not at all what happened here. So it was really a super hard-fought battle. Really, really impressive to watch, and Hunter Ace is very deserving world champion. So that's our tournament section. Longest we've had in a while because, boy, there was a lot to talk about. Again, I cannot emphasize how much that this tournament was so worth watching. And last year was kind of an overload of Hearthstone tournaments, and they kind of all ran together. This one will stand out forever. Forever, forever. It was really, really entertaining and engaging, and a showcase of why the world's best are who they are. Hearthstone Grandmaster starts May 17th. Our Specialist Series, if you want to play with your Coin Concede friends and family and possibly get sharked by one of the hosts, then go to coinconcede.com and join our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. We are taking signups through the weekend, and we are banning Archivist Elysiana. You cannot play Elysiana.
Also, whenever you fill out the form, there is a section for anything else you want to tell us, and please put Waggle Pick in that line.
That's him, not me. He said it, not me.
I filled out the form and said Waggle Pick.
Appa?
I was gonna say you should put whether you're gonna be able to play during the regular season and then not be able to play in the top 8, so that Hat has a shot at getting in.
Excuse me. That is rude. Man.
Sorry.
No, you're not.
That was not.
No. Well, either way, we're banning Elysiana not because the card's too good, but because we don't want our games going too long. Because we just talked about a 65-minute match of Shaman versus Warrior, and we don't want that to happen to anybody. So, anyways, tournament section, but we do have a decksplanations for you, and we're going to hand it right over to Appa.
Alright, so the meta is clearly not in a state of disrepair where it's unplayable, but the balance certainly is not perfect. We have the best classes are far and away better than the worst classes. Like, there's a big gap there, and Blizzard has been pretty consistently nerfing about 6 to 8 weeks at this point after set releases. And if that were to happen, how do we think it would go down? What cards do we think would be hit? And what's the case for nerfing them, and what do we think the nerfs will be? And I guess let's just start with one we've been talking about for a while, and that's prep. So what do you think are the pros and cons to nerfing this?
Who wants the pros?
I mean, the pros are this card's insane.
Yeah, this card is way too good. It's been way too good.
Almost every single rogue deck for forever, besides Tempo Rogue with Kalisa. Yeah, and I mean, it just allows Rogue to do way too much in a turn. And I mean, if you let me keep going, I will just beat this dead horse.
Yeah, it's just too good. All of the cards that are like this have been nerfed. And all these cards that allow excessive cheating of mana that have been in the game since the start. Obviously, there are some new ones that cheat mana, but cards that have been in the game from the start, pretty much all of them are now worse than they were before, except for Prep. Prep is just too strong. It allows Rogue to do too much, and I think it's one of the major factors in why Rogue is so good right now.
So my big thing about Prep is, if we think about the best rogue decks from the past couple years, like at the end near rotation, the best rogue deck was the pirate rogue deck with Shadowblade, and best card in that deck was Raiding Party, which was a symptom of prep making it cost 0 mana. And before that, the best rogue deck for a long period of time, pre-Odd Warrior, where you literally could not play prep, or Odd Rogue, where you couldn't play prep, was Quest Rogue. And that deck was very manageable to beat with aggressive decks, but there were draws, even if you were playing a really aggressive deck, there were draws with Rogue that you could not beat, and those all included preparation. It made Vanish in the deck busted, and it made Crystal Core busted once you completed the quest. Because if you complete the quest and then you just prep out a 2-mana Crystal Core, like, game's just over at that point, because you just have an insane amount of tempo. And then we can go back in Hearthstone's history. Prep's been an enabler for really busted stuff for forever. And I mean, right now we're seeing it again, like the Pirate Warrior from pre-rotation, or not Pirate Warrior, Pirate Rogue from pre-rotation Pirate Rogue. It's the same thing, except now we have Waggle Pick, so the problem's exacerbated even more. So it's things have looked broken in Rogue for a long time, not because of those specific cards, but because Prep has supplemented those cards and made them even more powerful.
Also, one of the biggest pros to nerfing this card, which we haven't touched on yet, is that it's less likely that Hat's going to keep it in his opening hand, which is going to make his win rate go up when he plays Rogue. And that's just a good thing overall. We want Hat to win more.
When I prep out Raiding Party, my win rate is just fine, thank you very much. That is not something that needs a lot of support. Alright, so I'm going to share the cons to nerfing. Let me be clear before I do so. I believe this card should be nerfed. I believe this card will be nerfed. But I'm going to share the cons because we provide balanced viewpoints.
In before class identity.
So...
Got him!
But here's the thing. Think about class mechanics that Blizzard has made. Right? Think about the class mechanics. What is priests? Besides, don't kill 4 attack minions and be unplayable.
Buff things and heal dudes.
Yeah, it's like health manipulation, right? Paladin is kind of tokens and stat for stat minions, I guess. Kind of also does the healing thing.
Efficient minions and some control tools.
Shaman's class mechanic is getting your house foreclosed on.
What?
Shaman's
class mechanic is getting nerfed when other classes are problems.
Yeah. And
So
like
I fully expect Hex to get touched in this next balance
and
patch.
Shaman's class mechanic is like literally having debt. And it's way too real. Like just paying for something, be like, ugh, I gotta keep paying.
I love this class so much.
Yeah.
I just love debt.
Oh
So that's Shaman's class mechanic. Druid, choose one and mana ramp. Both busted. Completely insane. They finally slayed the Sacred Cow this year. And Druid is actually kind of struggling right now because the one thing it can do is based on their last remaining super busted class card of Savage Roar. And it's not quite good enough anymore. It's fine. And Rogue, class mechanic is combo. And the biggest problem with combo is that even more than choose one, even more than mana ramp, and even more than whatever priest is supposed to be able to do or whatever, the combo cards don't work independently. They always work as part of a collective group of cards. And Prep is the linchpin of that group. Now, a lot of times, Rogue decks have done Backstab and Edwin, and that's about it. And those Edwins are smaller, right? If you have the coin, it really varies your win rate in those tempo Rogue decks, like the one that Tom won Worlds with last year. If you have coin, Edwin's great, and if you don't, Edwin's kind of clunky. And maybe that's better for the game, but it makes the Rogue core mechanic not work a lot more often. And maybe that needs to happen. I do believe that Prep will get nerfed because the power level of these classic Sacred Cows is finally being brought down in line with the other classes, and Rogue has been the same since the beginning of Hearthstone. But Prep allows combo to work in a way that closes design space for Blizzard, but also opens it back up on the other end, in that they can make combo cards that are maybe a little bit underpowered because of how Prep is going to work with them. Like if a card like Wanted existed in a world without Prep, that card would probably cost 3. but they can make that card and make it cost 4 and have it be in the finals of the World Championship because of prep. And that's kind of fascinating. So I think that it actually opens up as much design space as it closes, but it also encourages unhealthy play patterns when it's at the top of the meta. So I think it'll end up being nerfed. But I think there's an argument for it being core to not just Rogue's class identity, but to Rogue being able to function in a way that Fiery War Axe held Warrior together. And we didn't fix that until a year later. We printed a whole bunch of broken Warrior cards, and another year later when we could finally play them because they got rid of Baku. But I think they'll nerf it. I think they will do it.
All right, so with all that on the table, and I mean the pros and cons to nerfing is just going to be like discussion, and then we're going to go into like what we think is going to happen. So let's start with you, Hat. What do you think is going to happen to prep?
Okay, so this is not what I think should happen. It's what I think will happen. I think it will end up reducing spells by 2, and what I think should happen is it costs 1.
See, I'm actually of the opposite opinion of you. I think what will happen is it will cost 1, and I think that what it should do is cost 0 and reduce by 2. And the reason why I think that is because based on their nerfing philosophy, they don't like to change card text as much as they like to change mana costs, because mana costs are much more obvious and card text is not as obvious. You put prep in your deck and you expect it to reduce the cost of things by 3, and then you play it, and then you can't play your Fan of Knives. And so I think that they're much more likely to increase the mana cost than they are to reduce the mana, like the text on the card.
Yeah, I mean, but if you nerf it to 0 mana reduced by 2, you're nerfing a lot less functionality of the card, because you can still Myra's prep of this. You can still prep out Cold Bloods and Saps. You're really hitting cards that cost 3 or more, which is Fan of Knives sometimes, Raiding Party, which is important but temporary, and Myra's, which is important but temporary. Almost all the rogue cards they've been prepping for years are 2 mana or less.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that the 0 mana part of prep being the combo enabler might be the reason why it's too powerful, and maybe my solution to it is wouldn't help the problem as much as you're saying it. You can still prep eviscerates and stuff, but the fact that it's 1 mana so that you can get your combo cards out without having to invest the extra mana, I think is my main reason for the selling point. But I do think that they're gonna increase it to 1. As I said, that's just kind of how they nerf cards, or at least my perception of how they generally nerf cards.
I think what they should do with prep is make this in line with the Innervate nerf. Make it 1 mana and discount a spell by 2. Just make it a spell coin.
Okay, hold on a second. First of all, Innervate had no restriction. Second of all, we asked what they will do, not what they won't do, which is what you just said. There's
I
no
think
way
what
they
they'll
do that.
realistically do is make it 1 mana and just call it a day. It's just
Yeah.
the easiest way for them to nerf it.
Yep. Raiding Party.
Yeah, so, I mean, who wants to talk about pros to Raiding Party?
I know someone that does.
The pros to nerfing it? The pros to nerfing it is that it's way too efficient for the amount of cards that it generates. It interacts way too well with preparation. And it's just way too much value for 1 card. It's one of the reasons why Rogue can expend its resources so quickly and play cards that cost 0 mana and kind of throw away cards, because it has this value generator that just gives you so many cards in hand, so that even when you're spending your resources kind of frivolously, you just keep having more and more gas. And Miscreant's obviously still a part of that, but it's kind of the package deal of Miscreant and Raiding Party giving you just too much stuff to do. And so I think that yeah, the pros to nerfing it is that it forces Rogue to have to play more high impact cards because it can't afford to throw things away, or it allows some decks to not feel burdensome of just running out of interaction with them and able to stabilize, I think.
I feel like raiding party is just kind of part of an unhealthy cycle in general. Like, all of the draw threes in the game right now are seeing play in some way or another. Crystal Song Portal is certainly the worst, but I mean, it does see some play in Token Druid, but that has its own problems. Token Druid has its own problems. We see Omega Assembly. What's the name of the book? Book of
Spectres.
Book of Specters. Oh,
Book of
that's
Specters,
interesting.
Master's
What did I
Call
talk about?
saw a ton of play, and Raiding Party is seeing a ton of play. And I mean, cheap draw threes are just insane. Like, if you can build around them, which, haha, build arounds,
Well,
like they're super easy to build around. And I mean, draw threes in general are insane.
what I think Blizzard is probably learning again, and this is something that we really hammered home with Recruit, and what I'm going to say, there is one notable exception, and I'll follow up at the end, is that adding a tribal restriction to your card usually makes it better. That Blizzard has cost it for years, that adding a tribal restriction, beast, mech, demon, pirate, makes your card worse, so they cost it more aggressively. In reality, it makes it better. Omega Assembly only gets mechs with rush. If that was just discover a warrior minion, who would care? Dr. Boom, mechs with rush. You discover a bunch of mechs. Omega Assembly gets you more mechs. Way too good. I don't think that Master's Call is overpowered, but I do think it is a very strong engine. You notice Crystal Song Portal, no restriction, by far the worst. Book of Spectres has a steep deck building restriction, and Bookmage is very good, but the deck kind of has a natural Predator in Rogue, so, it's not perfect, but I think that's also the sign of the restriction on the card being more intensive and less specific. And Raiding Party, it gets you exactly what you want out of your deck because that's all you play. That is the problem with these cards. When it's only get a demon, you just play Doomguard and Voidlord. When it's just get a pirate, Greenskin, Dread Corsair, sometimes Deckhand, sometimes Burglar. When you're discovering random Druid mechs from Crystal Song Portal, or random Druid cards from Crystal Song Portal, you don't get that kind of decision. You don't get to specifically say, I want that thing. So, it's worse. That means, prep Raiding Party, 0 mana draw the 3 cards that I want, not just any 3 cards. If it was just draw 3, it might be worse, because it doesn't curve out unless you do draw 3 with specifically the pirate restriction and 1 weapon. With that being said, there are 2 nerfs that I think should and will happen. If they change, I don't expect them to change Raiding Party, because I think Raiding Party is specifically busted with 0 mana prep and another card that we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah. So what I would want out of Raiding Party, I think having it be 4 mana would be an ideal situation. I don't expect them to change it. This is not a card I expect to see any changes. You're going to see a theme on a lot of these cards that we're talking about. I think that it probably could and should be changed, but I don't expect them to.
So here's my thing with Raiding Party. In terms of standard right now, if you changed prep to 1, Raiding Party would still be very good. Definitely much worse, because you can't just do it whenever you want and draw 3. So if we change prep to 1, Raiding Party gets worse. It's still very good, because at that point it's obviously the thing of you use 2 cards, but it turns into a 1 mana draw 3, which is still really strong. But I would honestly be a little surprised, not super surprised, but a little surprised if they didn't change Raiding Party to 4, regardless of what they do to prep. Mostly because Raiding Party has broken some cards. On release, Raiding Party existed for all of about 2 weeks or something before they had to nerf Leeching Poison into the ground because it broke Kingsbane. It gave them way too many tools to tutor out Kingsbane, and Raiding Party was the culprit of that. I mean, Kingsbane's existence is the reason, but aside from that, Raiding Party was the thing that really broke the deck, and Raiding Party is, aside from Kingsbane, again, the sole reason that Kingsbane is one of the best decks in Wild. And that deck can literally just equip Kingsbane, go face for like 6 turns, and ignore the entire board. That's how good it is. That's how much of a busted aggro deck it is, and that's because you have the Cavern Shiny Finders, but you also just have raiding parties in there. And I mean, even having it at only 3 mana, if you change prep to 1, you'll still play it in Wild. You'll still play these cards in Standard, and they'll still be really, really good. And like, it'll definitely tune down the deck's power, obviously, because you're just upping the mana cost. But I think they'll still be really, really strong contenders without also touching Raiding Party. So I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they didn't change anything, but I also think that it's within the realm of possibility that they change it to 4 because of Raiding Party's dominance in Wild and its history and its short existence in Standard.
All right, I think we're good on that one. Let's
Yes.
move on to the next rogue card.
So next is everybody's favorite 3-drop, Evil Miscreant. So pros to nerfing this, I mean, the lackeys are all really, really good for their cost, especially with Miscreant. I would say that the worst lackeys you could get are probably the Evolve lackey in a vacuum and the Rush lackey also in a vacuum. But the fact that those come along with the 1/5 body make them really good in tandem with Evil Miscreant. Like, if you get the Evolve minion, you get to attack, potentially trade into something, evolve it into a 4-drop. That's really solid for 3 mana. And then you can also turn it into a 2/5 with Rush, trade into something a little bit bigger. I think the problem in this card, honestly, lies with the lackeys being too efficient, but I think it's much less likely they change lackeys. And I don't know. I can't really think of too many cons to nerfing this card, honestly.
I mean, the
Like-
cons to nerfing this card is it is the most played lackey card, I believe. I don't think that there's another card. Like, obviously, all of the cards that say lackey are playable to some degree, but
I
this
think
card,
Sludge Slurper is the second most, and it's significantly far behind it.
yeah, mainly because Shaman is just significantly far behind Rogue.
Yeah.
But the biggest con I can see from Blizzard's perspective is they like that lackeys are getting played,
Mhm.
and I think they want to continue to see lackeys get played because it's kind of one of the core mechanics.
Yeah, it's like their
that-
signpost thing from the new set
Yeah,
is the
so
lackeys.
so that would be the con I could see for them nerfing it, but I do think it should get nerfed. In my opinion, I don't think it's gonna get nerfed.
Really?
I would be very surprised. So it's a great target to get nerfed. One, because it's a common, so it wasn't a huge investment for a lot of people to get these cards. I don't know. It just seemed, based on my assumptions, I just don't expect it to get nerfed. I think that, honestly, my best idea for it to get nerfed would for it to be just a 1/3, because then it just becomes significantly less useful with the lackeys, as you said. Being able to put damage onto things and then shadow step it, or evolve it, or it doesn't interact as well with things. And when you're playing against it, you don't feel nearly as bad sinking 3 damage into it to get it off the board so that they can't do any shenanigans with it, versus a 1/5. You just can't realistically want to put 5 damage into this minion, because it feels so bad when that 5 damage could be going somewhere else, and that's usually where I feel like it gets out of hand. So I think making it, if they are to nerf it, it's probably going to be another mana cost thing. I would expect it to be something like 4 mana. I think 4 mana would be a significant enough nerf, but I don't know that they will nerf this card. I kind of expect them not to, even though I think they should.
So I do expect them to nerf this, and I've played a lot more against Rogue than I have with Rogue, although I have played a decent amount of Rogue. But the real problem with Lackey, I think, is that it helps Rogue in shutting down the early board way too much. Like, if you have Coin Lackey, against an aggressive deck, that game's pretty much over. Especially if you don't get a bad lackey. Like unless you roll like double spell, like discover spell lackeys, like you have the board moving forward for most of the game. I've played a lot of games against Rogue with Murloc Shaman, and I understand that Murloc Shaman is not a tier 1 deck. But it does what many other aggressive decks want to do, and that is develop onto the board. I have lost a ton of games to either backstab lackey or coin lackey into either the 1 mana summon a 2-drop or deal 2 damage. And this is all happening before, like, on or before turn 4, frequently. And trying to fight that kind of game against Rogue when they have the dagger for tempo, backstab, prep, abyss, fan of knives sometimes, you just can't win the board. Like, if they have a lackey early on, you've lost the board most of the time for the remainder of the game. And I think that's the real issue with the card. I mean, along with the fact that it gets picked up by by Waggle Pick, gets Shadow Step, provides a ton of value, all that kind of stuff. But I would honestly expect them to move it to 4 mana, and I realistically, I think they would just move it to 4 mana and keep it as a 1/5. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they moved it to 4 mana and made it a 1/4, because in the Rogue mirrors, Lackey is also exceptionally good. Not only because he generates the value and gets picked up by Shadow Step, provides you with board control tools, but it also lives through a Waggle Pick charge, and you never really want to backstab and Waggle Pick a Miscreant, but you kind of have to get it off the board, or else they're going to Shadow Step and get more value out of it. So making it 4 health to be able to be killed by just 1 charge of a Waggle Pick, I think would make sense. But I think realistically, they'd probably just make it a 4 mana 1/5.
So, cons to nerfing this card. Rogue would be worse. That's a con. We'd see less lackeys, which are the set's marquee evil mechanic, which is kind of a con. This card is stupid. It's a stupid card. You know what it really is?
It's a great card.
It's an evil card.
I love this card. Don't
Okay.
talk too badly about this card.
It says evil in the name Botticus. It is by definition an evil card.
But I like it.
Okay, you can like evil things.
I liked Flame Tongue Totem. That didn't save it.
Yeah, Botticus like Zarek's Priest.
Alright, so next up, we're
Oh,
going to
hold on. I didn't say what I was gonna...
I mean, you said it's evil? Yeah, I guess we didn't talk about what you,
Okay,
what you thought
so-
of Nerf too.
The reason why this card is busted is because it draws you 2 cards, you play it on turn 2, and then it trades twice, and then usually bounces and does it again. They need to make it worse at trading. So, the mana cost should match the butt. However you make the mana cost match the butt, I don't care. Shouldn't cost 2. Don't make it cost 2. Don't make it 2 mana 1/2. That'd be bad. Don't coin this out on turn 1. But
Please do that. Oh,
No.
please do that. That
No.
would be great.
that would be so broken. But
Coin Miscreant into Dagger? Oh, please.
But coin Miscreant on turn 2 is still going to be really powerful. This is a 1/3. I think a 4 mana 1/4 is not what they will do. I do think they will make it. They'll keep the mana cost the same and shave the butt. I think it'll be a butt shave. But I think the healthiest version of this card is a 4 mana 1/4 because it dies to 1 Waggle Pick swing or any other way that people deal 4 damage, and it competes with Prep Raiding Party if Prep costs 1, competes with Waggle Pick. It makes Rogue a lot more awkward, like how Paladin has all the good cards at 4 and Hunter has all the good cards at 3. When you clump the good mana cost, the deck gets worse. And I think that by making Miscreant 4 mana 1/4, they make it much more likely this comes out after Waggle Pick, which means it's way less powerful against the early game. Because I don't know if you played Token Druid against a Coin Evil Miscreant, but you lose right there. That's the end of the game. You lost right then. And I don't want decks to be pushed out of the meta because of a little kobold with a mask. So, I think that 3 mana 1/3 is a safe bet, and I think the best nerf here is 4 mana 1/4.
Alright, so the next one we wanted to talk about is like other Rogue cards, because I mean Rogue's just really strong, and we saw Bunny Hopper talk a little bit in the interview that we linked earlier about Edwin Van Cleef, and that's actually the one I wanted to talk about and picked to talk about. And there's another card that never really sees a lot of discussion, but kind of quietly carries a lot of matchups whenever it sees play, which is most of the time when you're not running Keleseth, and people have finally started to put this card back in their decks after like the week 1 builds of Rogue kind of fizzled out, and that's Sap. Sap is just like really, really efficient, and it has been for a long time. And if you think about the ways to combat Rogue, it's you usually can't do it with solely healing because they can present pressure. They put a lot of burst damage from hand with like Leroy Abyss, Leroy Shadowstep, Leroy Coldblood sometimes. You have Waggle Pick now. You have a bunch of ways to deal damage from hand. So a lot of the time, the best way to combat that is by putting a big taunt in the way. And them being able to prep out a sap or just play a sap for 2 and just say, remove this, take lethal, is kind of a lot. I mean, it's for a comparable effect for just pushing lethal damage, Shaman has Earthshock, but it only silences a minion and it doesn't like return it to their hand to where they have to replay it. Like it still leaves the card on the board, so their tempo investment's still there. But whenever Sap sees play, whenever I'm playing with Rogue, I always feel like it's one of the secretly best cards in the deck, and whenever I'm playing against it, it always feels like, man, this is super unfair. I just put like a big Witchwood Grizzly into play or something, and they sapped it and killed me. It's like, okay, I had some counterplay there. Neat. I think that would be a card that I would like to see them touch. Like, I think a sap at 3 would be fine because usually you're just either playing sap in a turn where you're playing Edwin early on, where if you're comboing that with prep, it just does the same at 3 anyways, and then later on in the game, it's a little bit harder to sequence that in with a burst finish, just with the 1 extra mana. But if you don't need to play a bunch of stuff from your hand and you have stuff on the board, a sap for 3 from your hand is still completely fine, so it doesn't kill the card, but it just makes it a little more awkward. And then I definitely like to see Edwin Hall of Famed. I like playing with the card, but I also recognize that card is busted. And I mean, you build rogue decks a specific way, and you're like, okay, this is how it's going to play out. Like Pirate Rogue right now, you're usually not doing anything on 1, daggering on 2, or coining at miscreant on 2, and then you're drawing your pirates and having a really sick mid game, and then trying to burst your opponent down in the late game. If you have an Edwin in your hand, that's completely out the window, and now you're an Edwin deck. And that's all you care about that game. If you have a hand of like backstab, prep, Abyss, Edwin, that's what you're doing on 1 if your opponent played a minion, or on 2. If you have the coin, you just go like backstab, prep, Abyss face, coin, Edwin. Can you beat it? No, you've lost. Like it puts your opponent to, I feel like, a really unhealthy test in the games where he's played very early on, and it's just a 1 card. It's just 1 card that you just put in any rogue deck that completely warps the texture of the game around that specific card, and it's one of those minions that is so far out of line with how efficient removal is that I think it should definitely be Hall of Famed. Like, you don't really have great removal that can answer it straight up. Like, if your opponent does this on turn 2 as a shaman, like, you have to wait an entire turn before you can even hex that. So you're taking like 8,
Earthshock.
10, 12 damage, whatever it is.
Earthshock.
No, you just draw Devolve or Hex, right, Appa?
I hate you.
Earthshock.
And yeah, I mean,
Iron Beak
most
Owl.
shaman decks right now
3 mana
don't.
BGH.
Yeah, so Earthshock's a potential answer. Doesn't always see a ton of play. Sees a little bit of play right now because Spirit of the Frog. Owl's a solid answer. And then Warrior has Execute if they have a minion on the board or like some way to trigger it early on. But also that requires mana investment right then and there or before the Edwin's played. But yeah, like I'm saying, I think it just puts decks to an unhealthy test really early on in the game. And I don't like how it changes a deck's texture completely when it comes down really early.
I don't think they're gonna change any other rogue cards. I think they probably should, but I don't know which ones. One rogue card that we're not talking about that I think could get changed would be Leroy Jenkins. Oh wait, that's not a rogue card, but
Kind of
it's
I
is.
think
kind
that
of a
card.
rogue.
I think
it's
that
kind
card
of a
should have
rogue
been
card.
Hall of Famed, like for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Leroy
card
and
is-
if we're talking about rogue cards, Leroy and Gadget, I think are
Yeah.
both discussion points.
Like, I wrote a video for Tempo Storm before the Hall of Fame announcement got put out, and I put Leroy in the list because it's exactly the kind of card they've rotated in the past. It goes in every single aggressive deck. Every single aggressive deck you will ever play starts with Leroy and then 29 cards. And same with
Not
Rogue.
Zoo. You start with
most
Rafam
of
and
the
29 cards.
No, you don't. After this weekend, you don't. just don't do it.
And it's like the go-to card for that mana cost for aggressive decks, and it's also the thing that they don't like anymore in charge. Like losing to a Leroy off the top feels awful 100% of the time. It's like, okay, I've stabilized this game. I'm at 5. Leroy Jenkins. It's like, okay, cool.
Losing to Leroy feels bad. Losing to Leroy Waggle Pick Leroy or Leroy Shadow Step Leroy is just very far and away the worst feeling because it's so much life in such a small mana cost. It's
yeah. I played a game of Control Shaman earlier today where my opponent played 3 Leroys. I still won that game because I had Witch's Brew for 20, Walking Fountain, Ancestral Spirit. But if I didn't have that ridiculous amount of healing, I would have lost. Yeah. Like Leroy in tandem with the Shadow Step effects also definitely makes him feel more powerful. And I think in general it'd be good to rotate him.
I felt a little bad when I played High Spear and Togwaggle and got the Discover 2 legendary minions, but then played what was it? What's the priest card that takes a minion from their deck?
Psionic Probe?
Mana?
Oh no.
4 mana.
Mind Games.
Yeah, so then I Mind Games a Khadgar that lived, and then I got Leroy off of the treasure.
So you got 4 Leroys.
Yeah, I only needed 3.
Ugh.
But the 4th one was icing on the cake. They didn't get to finish the animations before they conceded.
Okay, so while I think about who we're going to replace Botticus with on the next Coin Concede, I will say I'm in between. I do think Leroy, I'm amazed that card's still around. Absolutely amazed. Not because it's too good, but because it's too good. But like, it's how many times where you say I only lose to Leroy in a game and then it just happens. It's regardless. I think that Appa's onto something, but not Edwin, because prep is Edwin. Edwin with a 1 mana prep would be so much worse. So much worse.
Comes down an entire turn later, which a lot of the time is what you need.
It lines up with Spellbreaker, which people are playing instead of Owl, and I think that it's an Edwin in a world with 1 mana prep is much less threatening. But the reason that I think that Edwin will get untouched, and why I think Sap will get Hall of Famed, is that Blizzard has said the Hall of Fame is for effects they no longer want in Standard. And the last time that Blizzard printed a rogue effect that returned an enemy minion to their hand, when was the last time? I think Classic.
No, there was... Is the combo card in Classic the 6 mana 5/3?
Kidnapper's a Classic card, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the last one they did.
Yeah, so I don't think they've printed cards that return enemy minions to their owner's hand in 5 years. I don't think they've done that. I think they only did it in Classic, and they said, we're not going to do this. We'll return our own minions, but not yours. And so I don't know if that means Vanish will stick around, but that's an awkward card, and only really good with Prep and the Rogue Quest anyways. But I think there's a chance of Sap being the next Naturalize. Of it being out of character with what Rogue does these days. Of it being too efficient of a card, and an effect they don't do anymore. And I think that would make a lot of sense as a Hall of Fame card, as something they want accessible in Wild, but not in Standard anymore, and there's not really a mana cost where it makes sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point that gets Hall of Famed, and if they move Prep to 1, I don't think they touch Edwin. Because also, Rogue is like the favorite class of every developer the game has ever seen, because it is also the intimidating, weird, super high skill cap, what just happened to me class. And I don't think that Blizzard wants to take that out of the game completely. I think they need to leave that in.
Yeah, I like all of these changes together. It makes it seem like I want this class dead, but I don't think they'll do all of them like together. I think if they would touch each of these cards individually, that's how I think they would touch them. But I doubt they'll do all of these together because that would just nuke the class from orbit. And then the next card we wanted to talk about is we're getting to the warrior cards now because that's also the other best class in the game. And one of the reasons it's the best class in the game, or one of them, is Dr. Boom Mad Genius. And I mean, one of the pros to nerfing this, I mean, the major pros is card's insane. Whenever it's played against you, you lose the board for the rest of the game unless you kill them immediately. Because if they have any semblance of relevant cards in their hand, which usually they do, then they're going to play a mech, kill some stuff, and then like you lose the board from then on out. And
How you beat them is you play charge minions, which they don't, which there aren't a lot of anymore, but you hope they don't get blast shield, and then you do a lot of damage to their face where they can't interact with your minions. Because if they get to interact with your minions before they get to attack, you're never attacking again.
yeah, I mean, this card is very, very strong. I mean, before I get into the nerfs, like, what are some of the cons to nerfing this? I mean, it's a legendary, so they're not
It's the marquee
super.
card of Boomsday. I think it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the number one card. I think a lot of people enjoy playing it. It's a legendary. I think they're way more hesitant to nerf legendaries with cool effects.
Iconic hero with specific
it's
stats.
iconic, yeah.
7 mana 7/7 is a total thing. And yeah,
How often do they nerf the problem and not try to nerf the symptoms instead
well,
of the problem?
and also the symptoms may actually be the problem here. We'll talk about that. Like Dr. Boom giving all these removal minions rush feels bad when you're on the receiving side, and it is one of the more powerful powerful effects left. But as long as Blizzard leaves this in play, then Boomsday is the most powerful set of current standard, and we waited a while for that because Boomsday was Giggling Inventor and not a bunch else for the
It was
entire
Giggling
time.
Inventor, Ziliax.
Yeah, Ziliax, Dynomatic, Super Collider. Those were surprises. The Dr. Boom Hero card was pretty decent then. But I think that there is a chance that touching this card makes a lot of people that are playing in a different way than we are really upset, or the people that were playing it that are pros that are enjoying winning more with it are don't want to they want to keep playing it. Now I don't think that's the case, but I also wouldn't be surprised there's some internal metrics that's saying it's a 7-drop, the win rate can't be that high, but it feels pretty oppressive to play against.
It feels oppressive. I think it should be changed. I don't think it's going to. I honestly think they're not going to touch it because it's, as I was saying, it's just like a marquee card and it's a legendary. And it would have, I think it would take a lot more than it does for them to nerf it. And also the verbiage when they're talking about whether or not they would nerf a card like this, it very much seems like they're not going to, but they should. I don't know how they should nerf it. Probably something like gives the mechs in your hand and deck rush so that the ones you discover don't get rush, or maybe just give all the mechs in your deck rush. I don't know what the best I don't know what the best way to do it is, but like I said, I just don't see them nerfing kind of a marquee card like this.
Yeah, I mean, what I want is for it to give all mechs magnetic instead of rush. I think that would be a lot safer if you clear the board and you don't get busted down unless they have specifically Zodiacs. What? Appa, why are you making that face?
Oh, I have something on the board. Eternium Rover. This thing? You lose. That seems gross.
That's what, 2 armor?
If you put it on a big thing that's already there.
Okay, but I can interact with your board and keep you from doing that. I can put stuff on the board, and I still get to put a bunch of mechs together, and they don't kill my stuff right away. And I have to hold Eternium Rover for that. Like that's the worst blessing of the what's the blessing of health when you put it on? You gain 4 life. The 1 mana thing.
Blessing of Wisdom?
No, that's the draw card.
No, the one whenever
The
the
priest
minion
one.
attacks, you gain 4.
Yeah, that's basically that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
If we're turning Eternium Rover into that card, that is acceptable. That is fine. I think giving all mechs magnetic would be flavorful and inset and way less powerful. But it'll change what the card does. So they won't do it. I think they'll just make it cost 8. And I think it will have not a significant impact on what actually happens with it, but it'll make the win rate lower because you don't get the 7 armor right away.
I don't. Costing 8 is not a big enough difference. I think if they nerf it, it would cost 9.
Maybe.
If they're looking at mana cost alone, it would have to be 9 or something.
Yeah, so you
It would
can't
have
hero
to
power the same
be a
turn.
card- Yeah, 8
Maybe.
just doesn't seem like a. 8 doesn't seem appreciable enough to me, but who knows? Like it's very
like if we're comparing Boom to Hagatha at 8, it's not even a contest. Boom is still insane. Still so much better than Hagatha.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I don't think a mana cost nerf here is the thing. I mean, people have been saying it, like high level pros have been saying it on Twitter, on their streams, everywhere, constantly for the past however long this standard has been legal. And the rush part is the really oppressive part that feels bad to play against. When you're playing Boom, the value engine is great. Getting the different hero powers is
It doesn't feel bad to play against. And you hear Blizzard, it doesn't feel bad to play against. It feels fine. Everything is fine.
Yeah, like the deal 3, gain 7, discover a mech, deal 1 AoE, and the microbots are cool. They're nice little value engines, but the rush part, whenever you play Boom and you literally don't die the next turn, or if you're not in an enormous hole against a deck, and even if you are sometimes, you can just follow up with a Dynamatic or Omega Devastator or whatever, and the rush part of it is really, really gross. It just should not have rush, and I think honestly, if they're going to touch the card, I don't think it'll be a mana cost nerf. I think if they are going to touch it, it's going to be removing rush from the card. I understand that it's what they are doing with like the goblins, with the goblin lackey gives +1 in rush, so it's like a little counterintuitive to do that, but honestly, I think if they're paying attention to like the healthiness of the card, they'll remove rush from it and just like take the L on the flavor fail there.
I think it has to do something. I feel like it has to do something when it comes into play, though.
I don't
biggest thing.
envision them removing a static ability and just not replacing it. There's just no chance. Like it's not in line with what Blizzard does and not how the other hero cards are designed. It would be just a really, really major disconnect. And so they're going to replace it with something or they're going to change the mana cost. I expect a mana cost change because it is the simplest and keeps the soul of the card intact, as the meme goes. As much as I would like them to design a new effect, like maybe your mechs have +1 attack, maybe just your mechs with charge, I don't know. But for those that don't know,
Commander.
that's a reference to Warsong Commander, which was changed from 3 mana 2/3, your minions with 2 attack or less have charge, to your minions with charge have +1 attack. Such a dramatic, bizarre nerf that it actually influenced how they do nerfs to this day. And that was where the soul of the card meme came from, that they try not to change more than the mana cost and the power or the attack and the health, because changing what a card functionally does weirds people out and disconnects people from their own collections. So,
yeah, I mean, I can see them replacing it with something, but honestly, I believe the only way this car is remotely healthy is if they remove that rush passive ability. It's too good. And I mean, we'll talk about this actually right now, is in tandem with other cards, it makes them way too strong. Like Dynamatic and Omega Devastator, which are other warrior cards that I think should be touched or could be touched. Like, when you have an Omega Devastator that has Rush, your opponent loses the game on the spot. Like, if you play a Twilight Drake, it's like, okay, this is a 4/10, and then I have anything else on the board that has, like, reasonable toughness. Like, say I have a Twilight Drake and a Messenger Raven or something. It's like, okay, Mega Devastator your Drake, kill your Raven. Now I have a 4/2. Go. That's insane. And then, I mean, Dynamatic against aggressive decks, and even not against aggressive decks, against anything that wants to be on the board, either of these cards in tandem with Dr. Boom's rush ability are crazy. And I mean, there's the argument that if you touch these cards, you don't really have to touch Dr. Boom, but I mean, that also just like restricts them from printing good mechs that Warrior has access to, which kind of sucks. I mean, Dynamatic's been on the fence for a while. It's been one of those cards that, like, going into turn 5, it's like, all right, if they don't have Dynamatic, I'm in a really good spot. If they have Dynamatic, I might just lose. And then Omega Devastator that card's really overperformed from what I thought it was going to be. I mean, whenever my opponent plays Devastator against me, even if they don't have Dr. Boom, even if it's just on turn 10 and they just go Devastator deal 10, it's like, oh, that was just a shield slam that made a Yeti. Okay, that was good. So if they are to not touch Dr. Boom, I would think that they would touch these two cards, because I think they're the biggest symptoms of Dr. Boom's passive rush ability and the biggest offenders whenever Dr. Boom is up. And even on their own, they're really, really strong and potentially on the fence in terms of power level. I'm not sure exactly what they do to them, but I think those would be targets for them to look at.
Omega Devastator deals too much damage. I should not play an 8/8 into that and then get deleted. Like, 7 damage is fine. 6 damage is fine. Something. It's a 4-mana 4/5.
5 damage is probably still good enough,
A
honestly.
4-mana 4/5 that you would play on curve and be okay with, that also just straight up deletes a minion when it comes into play, feels pretty demoralizing. I think that some amount of damage that would allow a minion to stick against it would be reasonable, especially if they keep rush.
It's a Yeti with a relevant like clan tag, and then it also just functions as a BGH whenever you draw it off the top. It's like, okay, here's a Yeti, also BGH, also something I can magnate stuff onto.
And
also charging for 4. It should probably, if they want it to be a 10 damage thing, it should just deal 6, and then because then it rushes for 4.
Yeah,
because that's the 10 total.
And I think Dynomatic is just right if it costs 6. I think on 6 mana it'd be a lot healthier.
The difference between 5 and 6 as an aggressive deck against Dynomatic is really significant. Still bad for you, but on 5, a lot of the times it feels almost insurmountable if it hits stuff right.
Well,
like if you have a board full of like 1 health minions and they like go Dynomatic, put this 3/4 on the board, it's like, oh man, can I even win this?
It's the feeling that you get when you have to plan for the Dynomatic turn reminds me of Spreading Plague. It reminds me a lot of that, where you have to pool your minions' health for that turn. And honestly, the reason why Rogue is doing so well, because Evil Miscreant soaks up all the bombs. You can play Miscreant, and going into turn 4, you can have like 8 health on the board with the Dread Corsair and the Waggle Pick, and the Dynomatic is not guaranteed to wipe your board. Meanwhile, in balanced deckland where all the other decks are, that card just messes you up. So I think there's a really reasonable argument for like a Devastator that deals less damage, or even a 5-mana Devastator that deals a little bit less damage. Maybe like a 5-mana Devastator that deals 7, or something like that, along with a 6-mana Dynomatic that is otherwise unchanged. I think would dramatically change what Rogue does, and we have, or what would dramatically change what Warrior does. And we have a good amount of chatter in Twitch chat as well, saying that if you adjust Rogue not enough, then you need to keep Warrior powerful. But if you adjust Rogue down significantly, you got to be careful about not over-nerfing Warrior as well. Because there are a lot of ways to beat Warrior in the current meta. Bookmage will do it. Any mech deck, especially Mech Paladin, will 100% do it. But if you nerf Rogue too much, you have to bring Warrior down a little bit, but not a lot, because a lot of the decks that Rogue are holding back, a lot of the decks that Rogue is holding back beat Warrior.
Yeah, like the issue right now is not that Rogue and Warrior are just like so blatantly oppressive and way better than everything else. It's just that they do stuff a little too efficiently and they do a little too much a little too efficiently. So it's like just bringing them down just enough to keep them in line with the other classes. I mean, like, they could still even be better than the other classes with some of these changes that we've talked about, but like the fact that you can battle with them a little bit better with the other classes is really what needs to happen. Because like if you're not one of these classes and you queue up into one of like a matchup that's not fantastic, you're just at a severe disadvantage. Like even if the matchup could be potentially close, if say like a rogue is playing against a token druid and like the matchup can be close, like a coin miscreant into like prep something is like game's over. You've lost because they just do a little too much too efficiently. And the trick that Blizzard has to work with, and what is really tricky for them, is tuning them just right to get them in line with the other classes, or just a little bit worse so the other classes can fight them a little more efficiently.
All right. We got one more card to talk about, and then last call for write-in nerfs.
By the way, I didn't say, but I don't expect anything to get nerfed out of Warrior.
After Botticus talks, we've got one more card.
I just want to put that out there. I think that they probably could nerf the cards that we were just talking about, but I don't think they will.
Probably true.
I'm not expecting almost any nerfs, honestly. I'm expecting less than maximum. I would expect would be 3 cards nerfed, and I'm expecting less than that, probably 1 at most.
Yeah, I could see it. It really depends how delicate they think the balance is and how light of a touch they want to have. And I think overall, the meta is generally on the healthier side. Rogue is the deck that really is overrepresented and a little bit overpowered. And if that comes back in line, Warrior becomes a lot easier to prey on, because Rogue is like Pirate Warrior with Fiery War Axe is the deck that was holding back all the decks that beat J Druid back in the day, years ago. It's a very similar thing. Okay, we've got one more card to talk about. Archivist Elysiana.
So, cons here. Let's do cons first. The card's not super impressive on ladder, so nerfing it there would make your control decks have to function pretty differently. And I mean, it can be kind of a fun card to play with, like we saw at Worlds. Like the random effects off it make for some really crazy games, especially in the grindy matchups. Pros to nerfing though is like game length significantly reduced, and a nerf to Elysiana I think would be not exclusively for specialists, but would be a major factor in their decision. Because games take way too long. As long as Archivist Elysiana exists as it does right now, like I've said before, even if the meta is like mostly rogue, you're going to have control players, and they're going to have the Elysiana plan in one of their decks in the sideboard, which is Elysiana, Bankers, and or Brewmasters. And that's just an issue for specialists, and game length on ladder is kind of a not really a super prevalent issue, but it's definitely one that I've been seeing more people take issue with, at least in my circle. I mean, earlier today, Taylor had a game that lasted through 3 Overwatch ranked games, and I was like, okay, that's a lot. And I think it took like 43 minutes or something like that. It was crazy. But yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to nerfing it, but I think the one of the deciding factors would be in specialist, but it would also reduce some of the game time in ranked. And I think the only 2 realistic changes here are you either fundamentally change how the card works, because it's just kind of an issue, or you move it to 10 mana to make the specialist plan worse. But even then, you still play it in specialist and rounds go long, because at 10 mana, you can't go Elysiana Banker or Elysiana Brewmaster. And I mean, at 9 mana, I think it would. I think you could still potentially play Banker and Brewmaster, and if you have the coin, you just wait. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see them fundamentally change the card, but I think it's more likely they just move it to 10 because it's easy and it's the soul of the card meme. And yeah, I mean, it's just a mana cost adjustment, which is kind of what they do.
I expect no changes for this card, but the biggest, so most of my predictions, with the exception of prep, pretty much, is that they're not going to change anything. I think the biggest reason why I would be wrong on them changing cards, and if they change a lot of cards, it will be because they want to make Specialist more palatable, and if they really are going to be pushing to shake up diversity and really make the Grandmasters watchable and what people want to see in Specialist and see a lot of different decks, assuming they're not kind of pushing their competitors to try to play different decks, would be obviously nerfing a bunch of cards. So I don't expect them to do that, but if they nerf a bunch of cards, it'll be because of Specialist, and this will be one of the cards they would hit. I would think 9 is fine. If you want to gamble on having the coin and playing a Banker in your deck on the off chance that you have a coin so that you can save it to get
it's not
Elysiana.
specifically for being on the coin. It's like if you're both playing Elysianas, you get an edge by potentially having an Elysiana live and then having a Banker in your deck. And I mean, that's not the most consistent plan, but it's a way to get a leg up if you run your opponent out of removal that way. And then whoever's on the coin, if that happens, then just get got. Like,
right. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not saying it's the worst plan. I'm just saying that, like,
it's significantly worse
9
than now, though.
Yeah, like 9 is slightly different than 10 instead of way different. 9 is way different than 8 and slightly different than 10 is kind of what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I
looked it up. Warriors winning a lot less in Specialist than it used to. Bomb Warriors winning way more. The Elysiana lineups I saw, one had a Banker in deck 2 with an Elysiana in deck 1. The other package I saw had a Mechathune package, which seems way more effective at winning the mirror, because Hecklebot is falling out of favor. And control mirrors take forever, period. I expect Elysiana to stay the same. And the problem with Elysiana is not Elysiana. The problem is Specialist, as a format, is inherently, permanently, unfixably flawed. That these Specialist Cups will never be fathomable in a control meta. Never, ever, ever. And they weren't super pleasant in the Rexar meta either.
I think we're honestly understating the power of Elysiana existing as a control finisher, because as a control deck, you have to play that card. You cannot afford to not have it in your deck.
Sure.
And you play 29 cards in Elysiana, because if your opponent has it, you have lost. And that's kind of an issue as a neutral card.
But that's the case of a meta that's control heavy. And if Blizzard works in a way that Rogue is preventing people from playing anything other than hard control, and all that control means you have to play Elysiana, if you make mid-range better, Elysiana gets so much worse because you just die. It just doesn't matter. And a lot of matchups draws the bad card.
We have Rogue right now, we have Bookmage, but you still have to play the Elysiana as the thing.
If you nerf
decks.
Rogue enough.
Hunter X in Conquest.
Yeah. If you nerf Rogue enough that you can play Zoo and Token Druid and Bomb Hunter and all these other decks, I think we get to a world where Elysiana is not a must-include. I do agree that a neutral control game extender I don't love. And the bouncer effects I have seen so much less of and are being played so much less in Specialist even. I think this round of nerfs, Blizzard will try a more organic approach, unless they are terrified of Specialist being bad, and they remove Elysiana, but I think most likely in that case, if it is a nerf just for Specialists, they'll just ban Elysiana, which is a thing they can do. They'll just say, don't put Elysiana in your Specialist decks, and that problem is invisible. And on ladder, if they make mid-range better, then it's not really as much of a problem anymore. Yes, in control mirrors, one player choosing to have it and the other player not choosing to have it is a problem, but maybe that guy that wins a control mirror then next goes and plays against Zoo and draws Elysiana on turn 6 and dies because they have an 8-mana 7/7 in their hand. I don't know, but I have seen Elysiana in hands and be really, really terrible because it's not against a control matchup, and mid-range can't exist right now outside of Bookmage high rolling and getting a bunch of 7/8 taunts. So Blizzard may very well take a more organic approach with ladder and just ban it in Specialist because they want Grandmasters to make the money.
Yeah, I think if we were to see a change to this card, it would be for Specialists because, I mean, Grandmasters is the promotional league. Like, that's pretty much what they're all in on esports for right now.
Yep.
But
Oh man,
yeah,
imagine
I
if
wouldn't be
Grandmasters was Conquest. Oh, I would be
That'd
so
be so sick.
excited.
Yeah, I would watch a
Oh
lot.
my god, I would be so excited about it coming out.
Yep. So anyways, any other cards, any last calls? Conjurer's Calling, Mountain Giant, Magic Carpet, anything else?
I mean, I think Calling's fine. I definitely was wrong on the grade of that card. I wanted to talk about that because I missed super hard. Card's insane. I think Giant's probably fine. I mean, in decks that fill up your hand that, I mean, aren't super common. Like, we had Even Lock, and that did that really consistently. Cube Lock did it. Handlock's done it in the past, and now Bookmage does it. But, I mean, I think Giant's fine. I think it's fair. Magic Carpet is insane. Like, playing with that card is crazy. It carries Zoo on its back. Everything else in Zoo is terrible, but the games where you have Magic Carpet compared to where you don't are drastically different. And I think if they nerf some other stuff at the top end, in terms of Warrior and Rogue, they should probably tweak Magic Carpet a little bit. Maybe not have it be 6 health, because that's
6
a
is
lot.
so many. You never kill that card.
I know.
How do you ever kill that card on turn 3? On
Yeah.
turn 3, nonetheless. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
You're playing all these low-cost minions that can control the board, so you just have this 1/6 they can never kill.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they tweak Magic Carpet a little bit, because not that I think it's like Zoo's not oppressive or anything like that, but like it's the reason Zoo has any success whatsoever right now. And like the more sets get released, the more 1-drops we have. Other classes will probably start playing it. I might even try it out in Shaman with some other random stuff. But yeah, a 1/6 is a lot, especially for its ability.
The Zoo, specifically because of the card Magic Carpet, was by far Token Druid's worst matchup. And one card just making that happen because it traded 6 times and also made all your other minions little, like, removal spells. It's just too much. So, yeah,
Giving all of one thing Rush is pretty good.
Yeah, I think that, that card could probably just use a butt shave as well. Conjurer's Calling, if that cost 4, I wouldn't be upset. I don't think they will change it. I don't even know if they should change it. I just know that turn 5 Mountain Giant coin Conjurer's Calling feels pretty bad, and I don't expect them to change Mountain Giant's cost.
Yeah, whenever I play against that deck, it feels like Conjurer's Calling is cube. It's not never used for good, always used for evil.
Yeah.
Like,
And
4
also,
mana in that
but it
card
does
would
so
not
many
be
cool
unreasonable.
things too. It's so cool that you can calling their minion, like their huge Edwin Van Cleef, and here have a couple 3 mana cards, or use it with mind control tech. That is the most evil thing. Why is that card still in standard? Oh my god!
Another card that I said should be
I hate that
in
card
my video.
Oh my god!
I think the list was Prep, Leroy, Mind Control Tech, and then 2 others, Divine Favor, and then something else. And multiple of those survived the rotation, and I don't understand how.
Yeah. I hate mind control tech. Oh my god.
TC 130.
Anyway,
Mentally, you lose.
Yeah. Especially when you're playing it in the book mirror so that you can mind control tech their giant that they played and then calling it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that card way outperformed. But I don't think we'll get nerfed. I think it's kind of just a cool card. But we'll see. We'll probably see very soon. It's been 3 weeks, right?
And if they want to change things for Grandmasters, they have 16 days. So,
Yep.
if they're going to do them soon, they're going to do them if they're going to do it during this expansion, it's going to be before Specialist. Because there's no way that they don't.
They also need to give their players some time to have deck lists.
Yeah. Well, you say that, but they don't really. Maybe a week. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for explanations. We're going to ask ourselves,
How long can this go on?
I have a suggestion. We should do the warrior card, the 3-mana 3/3. That would be a cool one. Did somebody order a bomb? I like that one. That's one of my favorite voice
yes,
lines.
but what would that be for?
This, but for the outro.
What's the bomb part?
I don't know.
It's thematically. Never mind. It's fine. It's alright. Oh, and before we get any further, I do think there's a world where they make the bombs deal 4 damage. I think there's a possibility.
Yes, I could see that
bombs
too.
feel terrible to play against.
Oh,
It's
they're the worst.
Carving out an even 1/6 of your life total. I think there's a world where they just deal 4 instead of 5, and I would be much happier with that.
Me too.
Anyways, we have many folks we'd like to thank. None of them are bombs. Check out our thanks section on the website at coinconcede.com. You can find our contact info, show notes, and Patreon information. You can support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.tv/coinconcedepodcast. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. Write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. If you'd like some CC swag, head over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Viriatus, Ryan, Donald, Pug Ugly, and Doge TK. Who has Coin Concedes? Botticus, you go first.
All right, I'd like to coin concede to Dragon Rider for joining me yesterday on the co-op. Had a lot of fun playing some decks with her. Probably going to be doing some more co-ops, so I'll be Tuesday seems to be a good day to do them, so I'll be looking for more people to do co-ops with, or hopefully do them again with Appa, because that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, school's over for me, so
All right,
Yay.
we should do that. And then also 85 Hawk for coming out with the deck name for my OTK Hunter deck, Bored to Death. That was a good one. I like it.
Appa?
So I'd like to coin concede to the entirety of the tournament chat room in our Discord, because it is strictly better than being in Twitch chat, because that is a toxic wasteland that no one should ever go to. But our tournament chat was great. We were talking like the entirety of the however long I was awake watching Worlds, and even when I was sleeping, people were talking in there. Yeah, it was just a running chat while the games were going. It was a lot of fun, a lot of cool discussion. And also, coin concede to somebody who will probably never hear this, but Hunter Ace, because he is an animal and insane at Hearthstone and a very deserving world champion. He's been arguably the best player in the world for the entirety of this past year, and now he is the best player in the world. He has that title, so we live in the best timeline right now, I think.
Yes. Though props to Viper. He did well too. I've got a bunch of coin concedes. Tournament chat along like we talked about. Akuta Pasca and Wicked Good for making their amazing meta report and data engineering. Arena Sensei for making me laugh because Schwal admitted that timeout was healthy for the game even though he didn't like it. And Schwal, I respect your willingness to admit that. And also that stat for stat minions are not the way to play. Props to Arena Sensei. Go check them out. They're like 10-minute podcasts, nice and easy to fit into your commute. Coin concede to Kresh. He was in town last night. We grabbed a really excellent dinner with a black miso cod and a sizzling bibimbap with a fried egg that's cracked right over the top with some gochujang sauce, and then a cannoli next door at Italy. It was really wonderful. Kresh is a good dude, patron and friend, and
that seems like a weird palette.
It was great,
follow up with.
but yes, I understand where you're coming from. It was good. You had to be there. Rod Jon Snow was on episode 100 of Tier 5. That was really great. Congrats to Rod on 100 episodes. KJ Miller, I was on Productivity and Tech. We talked about not Hearthstone stuff, Hearthstone adjacent, and that was a really great podcast. A lot of fun and definitely different than what I normally do. Caketality for being a gentleman in the finals as I high-rolled the crap out of him because my deck did not lose to Warrior. I went 6-0 in the top 8, and all 6 games were against Warrior, 3 different opponents. And Blizzlet, because the bit on this week's show with Lore Master Eve, where they tried to recreate what Zilliax would be like in everyday situations, was amazing. Just like he goes on...
It was fantastic.
Yes.
Just some of the best.
Like, he goes on, you know how when you battle cry, he says unity, precision, perfection. So he'd go on speed dating and be like, long walks, sunsets, and it was just hilarious. Really funny. So, great episode of Blizzlet. I was listening to it this morning while I was fixing a projector, and I was laughing so hard that I almost broke it. So, props to you, Blizzlet. And hey, that's our show. So, keep calm, and don't draw the bomb. And if you see us on the ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Take cold comfort in your victory. You win. I can rest now. You win. For now. Now, your victory proves nothing.
The day is yours.
I choose death. You have triumphed.